Today's episode is brought to you by Coal Creek Equine, makers of the best equine spa in the industry. If you want your horses to be world champions, you better put them in a Coal Creek. Well, welcome everybody to Uncut and Real Raw podcast. Today's guest is Steve Ross. Steve, great to have you here, mate.
Clinton, I'm thrilled to be here. This is a great podcast. It's great for the horse business, and it's just entertaining. So I'm honored you to have me on.
Well, thank you, mate. I've been trying to get you on here for a while, and just with your schedule and my schedule, it's been hard to get it worked out, but glad you're here. You know, Steve, we've known each other now for over 20 years, and whenever people bring up your name, the first thing I say is, you know what Steve Ross is? And they say, what? I say he's a walking encyclopedia on the horse industry. He is like a walking encyclopedia. You name a horse from 1972 that won a futurity in the middle of Iowa, he'll tell you how it was bred, what it was out of, how much its mother won, who trained it, who sold it, what it sold for. It's like, how do you do it?
I'm just a horse nerd. I always have been. It's been the one thing I've always just been crazy about, and I don't mean to be that way and retain that kind of info.
Oh, I love it, because whenever I need something, I'll just text you, hey, how was that horse bred in 1929? And you're like, you'll rock it out immediately. I love it.
And, you know, it's my business.
It is your business.
And it's like anything else. If you're going to make a living at something, I've always said, you better know every single thing you can know about it.
Yes.
That's the only edge you have. So I've always tried to educate myself. And when I'm buying and selling horses or starting a new venture in my business, the first thing I want to do is I want to know everything about it, because it's how good gamblers win.
Yep.
Information.
Yep. Knowledge is power. So for people that don't know you, Steve, probably the best way I would describe you, if somebody says, what does Steve do? You're, to me, like a high-end broker, horse broker. You would be like a high-end horse broker. And there's different levels to the horse industry, from trail riding to 4-H to open horse shows, regional horse shows, and then you've got the world-class level. And there's brokers, that, in my opinion, on every level, and I don't think there's one level better than the other. Everybody's money's green. There's a lot of money in beginners and a lot of money at the top too. But I would describe you, at least the last, probably 10, 15 years that I've known you, as a really high-end custom horse broker. Somebody calls you, they're wanting a specific type of futurity horse, open horse, doesn't matter what discipline, whether it's cutting, reining, or cow horse. Your job's to find that horse, locate that horse, match it up, and try to get the right people in contact with the right horses. Would that be a good way of describing, as a general rule, what you do as a high-end custom broker?
That's exactly what we do. We have what I call a brokerage firm there at our barn in Scottsdale.
Yep.
And we deal with really nice show horses in the reining world. We try to be really specific on what we do. We have some great horses. We have had some horses go through that barn that have become really famous.
Yep.
And what we try to do is, I always just say I'm going to use my powers for good. Most time when you're buying a horse, the person selling it to you has a huge advantage in terms of knowledge. And oftentimes, you've seen it, I've seen it, it's happened to us.
Yep.
That person will take advantage of your lack of knowledge.
Yes.
All I've tried to do and tell the people that work with me to do is, let's take what we know and try to make sure these people are buying the right horse. We have a little bit of a luxury in that we'll have several for them to try. But being able to tell people, hey, maybe this isn't the right horse for you, and you should try something a little different, or maybe change your ideas, has really helped us be successful.
See, one of the gifts I think you have is you match up the right horses with the right level of rider. And that might sound easy in theory, but I think it's a lot harder than what people give it credit for. Because some people overestimate their ability, some people underestimate their ability. And there's no point having a horse with phenomenal talent if you can't ride it, and no point having a rider with a phenomenal talent that the horse won't match it. Your real gift is the ability, in my opinion, to match people and horses together. And that's an art form, because there's a lot of open horse trainers that can ride a hell of a horse, train a hell of a horse, but they can't buy a horse for a non-pro customer to save their life. I'm not trying to be a jackass, but that's the truth. They're phenomenal at winning, but try to get them to spend money to go buy a non-pro customer the right horse that's going to fit that lady or that guy. They're useless at it, because they keep trying to buy them level 4 horses. They keep trying to buy them horses that they'll want to go win on. The horse that they'll win on often's not going to pack the 55-year-old lady around in a rookie green as glass Reining, correct?
You've uncovered the secret to our success. Look, when I'm looking for horses, I'm looking for user-friendly.
Yeah.
We're in a period in time, Clinton, let's just be honest about it. There's a lot of people with the desire and the means to go compete,
Yeah.
and they're willing to spend the money to go do it, but their skill level's low.
Yes.
Okay? We as an industry should embrace that and say, okay, you're welcome here, but we're going to put you on a horse that you can have some success on. And instead of saying, well, you don't ride well enough, you don't deserve that horse, we just try to put people on a horse. And I always say, my out pitch is, when people start telling me they want to do this on this horse, I say, okay, that's great, but why don't we let the horse tell us if that's going to work out or not?
Yeah.
You go ride him, do a little reining pattern on him.
Yeah.
If it works, this is a great candidate. If it doesn't, just walk away.
Yeah.
And it really disarms people because they never get treated anywhere else like they do when they come to our barn.
Yeah.
We're the low pressure barn of all time. We focus on a matchup. Are you comfortable with this?
And you have a lot of repeat buyers too. I've heard that many, many times. People come back to you. Well, Steve, let's back up a little bit. So we kind of described what you do now, but you've done a lot of different things in your career in the horse industry, in different industry and phases. If you don't mind telling me, how old are you now?
I'm now 60 years old.
60 years old. Okay. Where were you born? Let's start back at the beginning, mate.
I was born in East Tennessee, up in the Smoky Mountains. Not a hotbed for horses, not horsey parents, not horsey siblings, but I've had the horse bug since I can always remember. And I always say, if it picks you, you don't pick it.
So I was just going to say, no relatives that had horses that got you into it, nothing like that? Yeah, just a kid driving down the road looking out the window and saying, I like that horse.
Every horse. Like,
That's awesome.
I would try to get free ponies, anything I could do to tangle myself up in a horse. When I was 13, there was a horse barn near us that had saddlebreds. It was 4 or 5 miles away, which the times have changed. Like, I didn't think anything. I rode my bike to that job every day and then rode it home. I must have been in great shape.
Today, not so much. We can ride the bike that far.
I couldn't think about it. But, I just thought I was stealing money because I was getting paid to brush horses.
Yeah.
It's the greatest thing ever. And I learned so much from that barn.
How'd you get into that barn? You just walk up to the barn owner and say, I'm Steve Ross, can I clean stalls? How'd you get it? I think this is important because a lot of young people want to know, how did you actually get started? They see you at the end of your career when you're making a lot of money and successful, but I think young people need to know where you got started. How did that happen? Did you walk up to the barn and introduce yourself? How did it start?
It started and it works then like it did now.
Okay.
Like, I boldly walked in there prepared, shook the guy's hand, found out who the decision maker was.
Yeah.
Like, I will have to give my parents credit for prepping me.
Yeah.
Even though they said they're not going to hire you, you're 13.
Yeah.
And I went in there prepared. One of the things my dad impressed on me was, tell them what you can do for them.
Yes.
Tell them what's problem you're going to solve for them. And I went in there with, I can drive a tractor, I can clean stalls, I'm good with horses, they don't scare me. I can do what needs doing around here, and I'll show up for work every day. And the guy kind of looked at me and laughed, said, you're hired. If you do all that, you're hired.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I learned a lot of good things. I got $2 an hour. I learned a lot of things working for that guy. I remember one afternoon, it was about 4 o'clock. He was bringing in the last horse. And my job was
And they trained saddlebreds.
They trained saddlebreds, very much in the thoroughbred tradition. You had a steel bucket with one with soapy water, one with rinse water. You did that on every horse, and then you walked them and rubbed them with a towel till they were dry.
So no hosing them off. Why not? Why back in those? Why didn't they hose them off?
That was the racetrack tradition. Came from Kentucky. They believed
sponge them off.
Sponge, and a real sponge. Couldn't be a fake one. And a soapy one, and then a rinse bucket.
Their whole body or just their back?
Their whole body, all over them. Get everything. But you didn't touch the mane and tail because you couldn't use fake hair then. So that had to be preserved at all costs.
Right.
But I was tired, and I probably had baseball practice after work. And the guy was coming in with his last horse, and I would take it, and he'd hop off, and then I'd go to work. And I sat down on a bucket waiting for him, maybe 30 seconds. He came in, he handed me that horse, and he turned around and said, by the way, you're doing a great job, but if I see you sitting down again, you're fired.
Yeah.
And that woke me up because I was a conscientious kid. And the other thing he told me the first day I worked there, he gave me something to do, and I went and did it. And I said, what do I need to do next? And he said, I'll tell you something, kid. He said, if you're not smart enough to find something that needs done around a horse barn, you just can't work here. And he's like, if the hose isn't rolled up right, you do that.
Yeah.
And the greatest favor anybody ever did me, because I learned how to be a self-starter and to think like a business owner and not an employee, and to take ownership of my little string of horses, and I took pride in them and what I did. And then to go fast forward, because nobody wants bored with the details, but
well, these are important things. I'll beg to differ a little bit. To me, they're important details because it seems like every guest that I've had on here, the first 5 years that they got into horses really shaped them. They got around some mentors. They got around some people that really taught them some important lessons, and that was one of them right there. If you're not smart enough to figure out what needs to be done, you don't need to be here. If I see you sitting down, you're going to be fired. You know, like these are things that still, you know, stay true today. You know what I mean? So they're not boring to me, but this is where people need to get started. And even though it's 50 years later, they still got to start somewhere.
Well, and I'm grateful that, you know, this was 1977. Times were different then. I'm grateful I had a boss that wasn't afraid to be a jerk to a 13-year-old kid. He didn't care about my feelings.
Yeah.
He treated me like an adult. I remember I'd been there about a week and a half, and he called me at home. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, Steve, did you rake this alleyway tonight? I said, yes, sir. And he said, well, I'm not really satisfied with the job you did, and this isn't going to work for me. I got on my bike, and I drove back down there, and I sprayed it down again. You had to rake it diagonally and get all the... It's the reason my alleyway and my barn to this day looks perfect, because he set a standard, and he didn't compromise, and he didn't dumb it down because I was a kid or I didn't know or, well, he's trying.
Yeah.
You know, how many kids are even down here working? Nope. He treated me like, if you're going to work here, you got to adhere to the standard. And then, you know, that guy moved, and an Arab trainer came in the next summer. I worked for him.
The same place?
Same place. And then a quarter-horse Appaloosa all-around kind of guy came in there, and that was
Back up just a little bit. So the saddlebred deal, was that a big deal back in those days for that barn? Okay.
Huge.
Now, I don't mean to be ignorant, but we don't have saddlebreds in Australia or gated horses. Was it like a saddlebred pleasure class, or they race these things? What do you mean by saddlebred? Did they do like walk, trot, canter?
American saddlebreds, they have basically the 3-gated and the 5-gated class, the fine harness class, a lot that goes with it. They'll have equitation classes and stuff, but their big shows were in Louisville and Lexington, Kentucky.
That's their hotbed.
That was their big thing. And their big show in Louisville, their world championship show, where I was a groom, had a metal badge, had to go through security to get. This was the end of, like, in the 1930s and 40s, wealthy people didn't have sports cars. They had American saddlebreds. They were the sports car of the horse world when horses were a big thing and everybody had them, but they were all utilitarian. You know, and in our lifetime, we've gotten so far away from that.
Yeah.
And the saddlebred business has kind of died off because it doesn't have the appeal that it used to. And, you know, it was fun. I learned some things from it. It's not necessarily the kind of horse business I wanted to do.
No, but I've also found this, and I don't know if you agree. Every horse part of the business you're into, it doesn't matter. Each breed has its own set of standards. Each breed has its own little tricks to the trade. You pick up on everything. So the next barn was an Arab barn, correct? Mm-hmm. What was their hot buttons? What did you learn at that barn that was different from the saddlebreds or anything there that you took away from that whole deal?
They loved me at the Arab barn because I'd come from a saddlebred barn. And in those worlds, a groom is a really skilled position.
Yes.
It's a valued position.
It is, isn't it?
And, you know,
I don't think a lot of people value how good a groom is. They are a professional groom, aren't they? It's not just a kid saddling and unsaddling a horse. It's an actual art form to do it right.
And in the Arab world, those main ring horses at Scottsdale, not the working Western as much, and the saddlebred world, that's still a huge thing.
Yeah.
Like having a groom is important. Having a good groom is an edge.
So you're working at the Arab barn, you're what, 15, 16? How old are you? Okay. Do you have your own horse by yet? Are you training? How are you learning? How are you, other than being a groom, you got aspirations to ride? Tell us about that part of it.
I saved every nickel I made that first year when I was 13. I had $822 after expenses at the end of the summer. And one of the other grooms, who was a trust fund girl and was rebelling against her parents by becoming a groom and not taking their money anymore.
Crazy bitch.
Yeah. But she had this really nice 8-year-old thoroughbred gelding that looked like a quarter horse that she'd shown in AHSA shows over fences. And she needed the money. And so I said, I'll give you $822 for him. So I'm not doing that. I'll take $1,000. Like, okay. And
how old are you?
13.
Okay.
And
this is your first horse deal going down.
My first horse deal. And I had to let that 822 just ride because I didn't have any more. And I remember hanging up the phone because it was such a formal thing to use the phone then. And my dad was listening, and he said, "What's going on?" I said, "I'm trying to buy this jumping horse from Melissa, the girl who doesn't shave her armpits."
I love it. You sure she wasn't European?
Yeah, she was American, but she was in full rebellion against those wealthy parents for giving her such a nice life and buying her show horses. But she wouldn't budge off the 1,000. And my dad came in there and said, how light are you? I'm like, $180 something. And he said, "Well, I'll help you out with it if you can pay me back. I know it means a lot to you." And I said, "Take me down there to the barn." And so he put me in the truck, and he gave me the 182, and I had the 822. And I got $1,000 together, and I went down there and paid that girl cash for it and jumped on him with a halter and rode him home.
That's awesome.
And I used him for 3-day eventing and pony clubbing. Had a ton of success.
You keep him at home? Where'd you keep him?
Kept him at home.
Just in a paddock?
Just kept him at home in a paddock. My parents had a little acreage there.
Yep.
And I had a friend of mine that went on to design the cross-country course for the Atlanta Olympics.
Okay.
We went to high school together. He didn't know anything more about horses than I did, but we decided we were going to become 3-day eventers. He had a saddlebred. Mm-hmm. I had this thoroughbred, and we just started doing it. We just started entering shows, and we'd fail in dressage. We go over all the jumps, but we weren't good at dressage. And when the pattern said you have to go and salute, we'd do it like we were in the Army, and they'd get very upset with that.
Like, in the Army. Put your hand up.
Yeah, you're 13. Why are you saluting? I said salute. We didn't know.
I fucking love it.
We were such hillbillies, but
I love it.
Like, we'd come home, we were like, guys, the only thing that I related to it around those were the guys that raced cars, and they would go to the track on Friday night and then work all week at night to try and fix what they broke and figure out how to make it run better.
Yeah.
And we got really good. Rich went on to work for Denny Emerson, who's on the U.S. Olympic team. Like I said, design and build that cross-country course at the Olympics when they were in Atlanta. I was third at the Mid-South Pony Club at the Kentucky Horse Park. And it was all kind of self-taught. Like,
that's what I was just going to ask you. Who were you trying to watch trainers train their horses? Were you asking questions? Were trainers friendly to you kids at that time? Tell us about that.
The guy that helped me the most was the Western trainer, who's dead now, a guy named Andrew Hamilton that trained Apps and quarter horses. Mm-hmm. He was a typical old school kind of caveman horse trainer, you know.
Yep.
But he knew how to get a horse broke, and he was a horseman. And I would ask him, like, in the summer, can I bring my jumping horse down here and keep him so I can ride him after work? Sure. Well, he was a horse trainer. He couldn't help it. He'd say, "Hey, Curls," that's what he'd call me. "You know what you need to do to get that horse broke? Some stuff we probably shouldn't do now." I mean, it wasn't bad, but, like, nobody in the eventing world was doing the kind of stuff. And my horse stepped off that trailer for that dressage class next time. He's ready to go to work.
Oh, yeah, that motherfucker.
He looked through that bridle like, we're good, you know?
Yeah, he'd come out of that trailer. Hey, listen, we're all good now.
Yeah.
We've been to the Western barn.
I know what the job is, and I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
And
he had the surrender flag up.
Yeah. But I got really into it, and when I was 18, as soon as I got out of school.
So did you work for any other trainers in that period?
Just that guy all through high school.
Right.
And then
straight after school to what time?
Not as much after school during the school year, but always in the summer.
Yeah.
And whenever I was needed. And then year-round going to shows and stuff. I liked it. They put me on horses to show. Like, I would show at the Appaloosa Nationals in showmanship and horsemanship and trail. Okay. And I really didn't know anything about that stuff, but it was fun.
Yeah.
And I noticed I was the only boy among 30 wealthy, good-looking young girls.
Oh, that was hard to take.
This is nice.
The odds are in your favor.
Yeah, I mean, in high school, I had no social standing whatsoever.
Yeah.
Didn't play sports.
Yeah.
A short, skinny kid, you know, just didn't talk.
Yeah.
So I felt like I fit in the horse world.
That's awesome.
And I wrote some letters and stuff like you do, and got a job with Tommy Manion, who was, like, I figured I'm going to ask the very best guy in the world.
Silver Spurs Equine. Our stallion roster consists of over 30 of the industry's top performers and producers. Locations in both Scottsdale, Arizona and Purcell, Oklahoma. Top quality prospects offered to the public. We want to see you win on a Silver Spurs horse. We have expanded our Breeders' Futurity incentive and taken it to the next level by matching champion payouts of all levels in open and non-pro competition. These events now include Horses sired by Silver Spurs stallions have bigger opportunities to compete for more money. Plus, at the NRHA Derby, we will also pay the champions of novice horse derby divisions, and even bigger payouts to the champions of the 4-year-old stakes. See our website for full details, silverspursequine.com.
You know, every trainer's looking for an edge on their competition. You know, whether it's a better horse, better way to train it. But really, in reality, all the trainers have got access to great horses. All the trainers are doing a lot of the same techniques. To me, the next greatest edge on competition, whether you're reining, cutting, cow horse, eventing, or racing, is keeping your horses sound and ready for competition. For the last 4 years, I've been sparring my horses by Cold Creek Equine Spa, and I spar them for 20 minutes every day after I ride them at 36 degrees. It ices down all 4 legs. What a game changer. My vet bills have been cut back by 50%. My horse's soundness has been gone through the roof, okay? People think that spas are expensive. It'll pay for itself just on saving on vet bills in the first 18 months. Spas have been around for a long time, but for years they've been junk. They are broken more than they actually work. You needed to be like a plumbing engineer to make the some bitches work. Cold Creek Equine are using the latest technology, industrial strength machines that are basically maintenance free. Anybody can operate this thing. Even me as a horse trainer, I can operate it. And more than anything, it stays working. Go to their website, check them out. It's a game changer. In the next 10 years, if you're a professional horse trainer, if you don't have a spa, you will be left behind on your equine soundness. So back up a little bit. I want to know, how'd you get from the eventing, jumping kind of world and then say, I want to go work for Tommy Manion? Like, did you start coming more Western? What was who got you more Western based, or you just kind of liked it more, or just life pushed you that way? How'd you get from eventing to the Western?
I liked it more. I never really stuck with the people in the eventing world. I never fit in.
Yeah.
I was kind of an outsider. I liked the horse training part of it, but it just didn't fit. And when I'd go to those quarter horse and Appaloosa shows, man, it was fun.
Friendly.
Great sense of camaraderie.
Yeah.
Got to compete in a lot of stuff my high school years that I wouldn't have because I wasn't athletic.
Yeah.
But doing barrels and poles and trail, and like, it was, part of my pay was they'd pay all my entry fees at shows.
And take your horse or one of their horses?
No, one of theirs.
So why were you showing their horses rather than the owners?
Well, they would own them, like the trainer would.
The trainer might own a couple of horses, right?
They owned a really good horse named Handy Fox, who was 1973 world champion, senior Western pleasure horse in the Apps. And then before that, with the guy I worked for, before that, Terry Thompson had won 6 or 7 world titles in barrel racing and pole bending on him. And then he won a world title in the pleasure driving. This is a great horse. It's kind of a Hancock bred, gorgeous app, big mane and tail. Pretty headed.
Did
hot.
You say I'm good mane and tail on a fucking app?
Really good. He's a good horse.
That's amazing.
He's a good horse. And he was like 16 or 17 like I was, and they owned him, and they're like, we're going to gild this stud and give him to you to show in the youth. And so I could show him in every class. It was great. But I wanted to move into the Western.
So at that time, you were reading the magazines, and Tommy was the man. How did you focus on Tommy? What made you say, that's the guy I got to go work for?
Well, because he was great at everything.
Yep.
When he started out in the reining, he won the reining for 30 or was second. Mm-hmm. The pleasure, the cutting,
yep.
Whatever he did. And the thing.
Do you remember the first time you ever saw him show a horse live?
At the Congress somewhere, probably. He was just a legend. The thing that stuck out for him over everybody else was he had business skills nobody else did. Mm-hmm. He's so far ahead of everybody else. He would have been a multimillionaire in any endeavor he chose to go into. He just chose the horses. And, I only worked for Tommy maybe almost a year until I got another good opportunity.
Was it hard to get a job with Tommy?
I guess, but...
Was he in Illinois when you went to work for him?
No, he had just moved to Texas.
He just moved to Texas.
Todd Summers was there then. John Dean was the show barn manager. A lot of really talented people.
I can't tell you how many guests have been here in the last year and a half and all said they wanted to work for Tommy. Like he must have been an inspiration to young people because everybody, and a lot of them told me, well, how Doug Carpenter, our good friend Doug Carpenter told us, Clinton, there was a 2-year waiting list to get into Tommy. Like you just couldn't rock up. There was a list of people ahead of you to get that job. He was that sought after.
I must have just got lucky because
Yeah.
I didn't know him. Nobody vouched for me. I showed up once again confident, had a resume. I hitched a ride with a horse hauler to get out there. You know, one of the things I've learned, I got from Tony Robbins, that if you're going to take the island, you got to burn the boats. And I've always taken that approach. You have too. When you commit to something in business or life, and that doesn't seem like a big thing, but I really didn't know how I was going to get back to Tennessee if that didn't work out.
Yeah.
But I figured I'll make a plan.
Yeah.
I'll do something.
You'll make it work.
I'll make it work.
There's something to be said, isn't there, Steve, about when you don't have a plan B, fucking plan A is plan A. It's
Yeah.
got to work.
That's
And you make it
exactly right.
work. When we're in the back of your mind, when you've got, I can go home, or I got parents' money, or I got this if it doesn't work, I think it cripples you. You got to have that fear. I had a fear. I was in a strange country by myself, $400 to my name. No parents' money, strange country. Like, there ain't no going home. I remember when I left high school at 15, my dad supported me and mother and said, you can leave and go be a horse trainer. But my dad specifically told me, you're not coming back. You know that, don't you? And I said, what do you mean? Well, Christmas, Easter, all that shit's good, but you don't live here anymore, son. When you walk out that fucking door, you're gone. You don't get to come home. There's something pretty powerful about that. Like, holy shit, I got to swim.
Yeah.
There's no going back to the island. You got to swim to the next piece of land. So I think that's important, Steve.
I remember sitting in the shower when that realization came to me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm committed now. It's
Yeah.
all you. And
So what happened? You rocked up
go.
unannounced to Tommy, or
Yep.
do you remember
Went
the
in.
conversation?
Yeah, introduced myself, told him what I was willing to do, what I could do for his company. Remember using that
Yeah.
verbiage. And interesting, John Dean told me this later. I'd had some horses for a guy that was pretty shady at the time. Wound up going to do a little prison time. I don't know. And Tommy said, what about that guy? And I said, hey, Tommy, I've heard all the rumors you have, but all I can tell you is the guy's treated me better than anybody else, and he's been respectful to me, and he's lived up to his word. So I really can't speak to any of that other stuff. I can only tell you how he's been to me, and I love the guy.
Yeah.
And he told John Dean later that that's why he hired me. He's like, there's a loyal, decent guy, and there aren't very many of those, and he sure seems willing to work. He gave me 22-year-olds to start in a mare motel, and that's where I started for him.
I think you said something that's really important, Steve, that a lot of young people miss is, even from that job at 13 at the Arabs, you went to him and told him what you were willing to do. You didn't say, what are you going to give me? You said, I want to do this, this, and this, and this. This is how I'm going to be an asset to you. I'm willing to do this for you. I can't tell you how many horse trainers now are discouraged because young people walk up and the first thing their question is, what are you going to do for me? How many horses do I get to show? When do I get to show? When do I get my first 3-year-old?
It's why the foreigners have taken over,
You know,
because they
yes.
want it. They'll come here and
Yes.
work. And
I'm
I don't
not-
mean that in a demeaning way, saying
fuck
foreigners.
Yeah. No,
but
just say it what it is. This is called Uncut and Real Fucking Raw. So let's get even more raw. You ready? I'm not going to mention a trainer's name, but he's won millions of dollars in his sport. He has 6 assistants, not one fucking American. All foreigners. I chuckled one day. I rode past him. I said, no Americans, eh? Nope, all foreigners. We just chuckled because the foreigners will fucking sleep on the concrete. This foreigners will eat ramen noodles all fucking day to get a chance. They'll work for free.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
it makes sense. And
Because they want it badder. You know what I mean? There's no such thing as somebody cleans a stall. An assistant trainer cleans stalls in foreign countries. There's no hired help that does that. You do it. We just chuckled about it.
Yeah, and I always say the first half of my life, I never made more than $600-700 a month because
Yeah.
I was an assistant horse trainer, and I told myself, and I tried to explain to my non-horsey family, I'm in college. I'm getting a master's degree. What I'm learning here, I'm going to turn around and sell it for the rest of my life.
Absolutely.
And I did that.
You got paid in knowledge.
Yeah.
Steve, the first 2 years of my apprenticeship, I worked for free. But it really wasn't free. He paid me millions. I got food to eat, a little caravan, 5th-wheel caravan to sleep in. I was happy because he was paying me in knowledge. I make a lot of money now, millions of dollars a year off what he showed me. If I were to walk up to my mentor, Gordon McKinley, at 15 years old and said, you should pay me to learn your techniques. You should pay me to train, for you to teach me. He would have said, fuck off.
Yeah.
I thought I was stealing from him for going for free. Like the fact that he wasn't charging me, Steve, I thought, oh my God, I must be the luckiest kid in the world that I get to be here for free and not even pay. You know what I mean? So for young
Totally.
people listening, walk up to the next job and say what you're going to do, not what can you do for me. Yes. I can't tell you how many trainers have said to me in the last 15 years that the amount of kids that walk up and say, when do I get to show? How many horses do I get to show? I don't clean stalls. I don't do this. A kid walks up with the opposite attitude, he's got a job immediately.
It makes a difference.
It does make a difference.
And, I try to keep that in mind. I had a lot of great mentors. Tommy was one.
What were the greatest lessons you learned from Tommy?
Gratitude and respect. It didn't matter the lowest guy on his totem pole. If he needed the weeds trimmed out front, he'd go to him. Margarito, can you do me a favor? I think we need to give a little attention to the front area out there. And if you can take a couple of the guys down there and clean that up, I'd really appreciate it. And that was how he spoke to everybody. Can I ask you a favor? Yeah. I mean, we were all, like you said, that was the place to work there.
Yeah.
And if you had one of those spots, you didn't want to lose it.
Yeah.
I saw him just see the ball so well. We had a girl that worked there that was not good. She was an intern. And, she said some things to a client one time that really weren't under the category of riding for the brand.
Yeah.
And we all knew she's going to get fired.
Yeah.
Everywhere else, she'd have been fired right there on the spot. So Tommy comes the next day, and he calls that girl in. He says, I've got great news for you. There's a ranch down the road. They're looking for a manager. It's not as much riding as you're doing now. I know you'll love that. I've told him you're in. It comes with a house. I'm going to take you down there. She was thrilled. He comes back. And I'm like, number one, I just have to ask, like, did you set all that up? He's like, totally. And I'm like, well, why don't you just fire her? And he said, well, let me tell you how it works, Steve. He said, that girl doesn't fit here, but she comes from a very wealthy family, and she's probably going to be a vet one day. Anyway, she'll be in the horse business at some point.
Yeah.
And I don't want to burn a bridge with her now. I know she can't work here another day, but I'd rather kill her with kindness a little bit. I accomplished my objective in this. She doesn't work here anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't burn a bridge with her, and I'll be able to do business with her one day. That's where he was smarter than everybody else. He never let his ego get in the way or put himself in a position. He's very Michael Corleone in that he kept what he was really thinking to himself. In terms of negotiating and doing business, the guy was great.
There's a lot to be said about not burning those bridges, isn't there? It's funny. In life, and I've fucked this up a few times early in my career and adult life, that the bridge you never think you're going to need is the one you do need. You'll swear black and blue, I will never need this person again the rest of my life. I don't give a shit what I'm doing on. And sure as shit, 3 years later, the one bridge you need to get over to get that job, get that horse, get that owner, you got to go through them. Isn't that just the way it is? So now I've done the same thing, learnt the same lessons, is you might want to blow that fucking bridge up. In your head, you're blowing it up. You might blow it up behind closed doors, but out publicly, you'll be like, yes, sir, thank you so much. Sure appreciate that. See you down the road,
I learned that from our mutual friend, Andrea Fapani, one time. And this was years ago. And we had a customer that was, let's say, high maintenance.
Yeah.
And I asked Andrea, I'm like, how do you rationalize dealing with that customer?
Yeah.
And he said a couple things. I have a 24-hour rule. I don't respond to them until I've had time to think out my response, because they're worth more to me in my barn than any satisfaction I'd get from yelling at them or telling them to come get these things. He said, if it gets to the point where they're not worth having in my barn anymore, I'll just have a conversation with them. I thought, wow, what a lot of wisdom that guy has. And he didn't let his emotions rule him or run his business. He just thought his way, what's the best path here?
Yeah.
So I've learned a little bit of that from a lot of people, but Tommy, by far, in terms of running a business, seeing the big picture was the biggest influence ever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. There's a lot to be said about not burning that bridge, because that money will come back around. I found. I had a customer probably 4 years ago that did me wrong in a big way with the performance horses. 4 years later, and I treated him really well. It could have gone off the handle and really had a right to. treated him really well, took care of his horses until he left, like really didn't put him in a bind at all. Went above and beyond to hand him off to the next guy that it was smooth sailing. You know what I mean? Left it be. 4 years later, that guy came to me, apologized for what he did to me, apologized how he treated me, gave me a $75,000 yearling. Said, come into the pasture, Clinton, I did you wrong. I know I did, I apologize. I picked one out, 75 grand he gave it. And I said, and he said, I'm talking about papers, everything. You get the papers, the transfer, not just you get to borrow it. It's yours. Sure. And I said, I can sell it, I can keep it. He said, I don't give a shit what you do with it. He said, this is my way of saying I did you wrong, I acknowledge it, I'm sorry. You think if I would have cussed that motherfucker out, he would have done that 4 years later? No.
No.
Karma's a bitch. It always comes round. It takes a little longer sometimes than what we want to get paid back for certain things, but I respected him. I shook his hand, and I'd actually consider him a friend now. If he called me up at midnight and said he needed something, I'd bend over backwards to help him because he made it right. But if I would have done what I inside felt, 4 years later, he wouldn't give me a $75,000 yearling, I promise you.
Yeah, and it's true on a business side, and I believe it on a personal side too. You know, it doesn't bother a person for me to hold a grudge against them. Bothers me.
Yeah.
Takes away from what I'm trying to do, robs me of energy, but it doesn't affect them like we think.
So, other lessons from Tommy before we move on from Tommy?
Just responsible. Like, I probably shouldn't have left him. I got an opportunity
How long were you
to go
there?
show. About a year.
Okay.
Was all.
And what do you felt like? What do you think you could have gained by staying there, Steve?
You know, just more exposure to what he did. Like, that was right at the point I actually started.
So he would have been getting out of pleasure horses by that stage, correct?
He was actually asked to leave for 2 years by the American Quarter Horse Association for one that I started. It was an own son of Impressive, and, you know, maybe or maybe not. They put a fake testicle in him. We can say it here.
Yeah, you can say it here. Yeah.
Anyway, he sells it to this guy in Indiana. This is common
it is
public
common,
record. I'm not throwing Tommy under the bus.
When Tommy was sitting there, it doesn't matter how much alcohol I gave that old bastard, I could not get him to turn loose all these stories. We've all heard the stories. We all know they're there. And I said, Tommy, come on, you're going to be dead soon. Turn loose of these stories. He wouldn't do it. We laughed our asses off. He wouldn't do it.
Well, he's too smart. And I did ask him, you know, anyway, what happened? Like, this horse, you know, did have a fake testicle in its scrotum to make it appear normal. And it did die a year later when the guy bought him.
Every day,
yeah.
Steve.
Anyway, Tommy was like, I'd have just paid the guy his money back. And he would have, no questions asked. He would have just said, oh, you're right.
Yeah.
We maybe did do that.
Yeah.
But the guy wanted to run a stink about it. And so Tommy just said, okay, deuces out. Went from being the biggest quarter horse guy at that time, 35 world titles, but he did it in reining, cutting, halter, pleasure. He was just the guy. If he wanted to win that class, he'd win it. And he just said, I'm done. I'll just go be a non-pro cutter, and I'll stand these stallions. And made even more money. Yeah. And so I kind of see the tea leaves, like, and I had a chance to go show and do some good. So I left there, but, you know, he just treated me so well. Like, I'd been there a little while, and this is a story that, like, nobody knows. He never told anybody. I would ride to work with Todd Summers because I didn't have a vehicle because I hitched a ride with a hauler to get out there.
How old are you and Todd at this point?
Todd's 18, I'm 19.
Okay.
Todd gets a job with Jody Gallion, who at the time...
I did his podcast last week. He was phenomenal.
Yeah, what a great hand.
Yeah.
You know, won the cutting and the pleasure fraternity.
Oh, yeah.
And so Todd left, and he was kind of my ride to work. We lived together, and then I would ride to work, and Tommy's like, hey, you going to get to work? And I'm like, I hadn't worked that out yet. Tommy's like, let me see what I can do. So he sells 6 horses to a car dealer from Denver. One of those he traded for an F-150 XL baseline brown truck. It was like $14,000 retail. And Tommy calls me into the office, and he says, jump in. We're going to run to the bank. I bought you a truck. I said, you bought me a truck. He said, here's what we're doing. He said, I traded a bunch of horses, this guy, for a truck. $14,000 retail. I remember these numbers. He says, 11.2's cost on it. So that's what I'm going to sell it to you for. And I'm like, don't have $11.
Yeah,
much less
11,000.
11,000. He said, I know. Takes me to the bank in Pilot Point, sits me down with his banker, says, this is Steve. He works for me. He's borrowing that truck. I'm going to co-sign the note for him.
That's awesome.
Fill it out. Like, I had nothing.
Yeah.
And we get done. The payment was like $315 a month. And Tommy's like, can you make that payment? I said, no, I want you to pay me. Like, I couldn't.
Yeah.
And he said, all right, we get back. Kim Dean was his office manager. He said, I'm going to tell Kim, give you $315 raise a month. And he did it.
That's awesome.
Like,
he's a good man, isn't he?
He's a good man. Like,
a lot of people talk very highly of Tommy. Sure, everybody's got their haters, and Tommy does too. But far more people talk positive about him than negative.
And I heard all those rumors about, they're hauling cocaine in the uterus of mares.
Yeah.
And I asked him about it. We're going to a show. He started laughing. He said, Steve, what happens when they use the bathroom? It would come out, wouldn't it? He goes, yeah. He said, if I'd done a fraction of the things I've been accused of, I'd be in jail. And I had to give him his due.
Yeah,
like,
that's a good point.
He was fine. Great horseman.
But you got to remember, when he was winning at that level too, all winners get hated on. Mm-hmm. You notice, Steve, tell me if you agree or disagree. People that hate on you are never doing better than you. People above you never hate on you down. Like the bum that's on the corner of a street, nobody hates on him. Nobody cares about him because he's a bum. You become successful, rich, make money, do well, win, your circle of friends gets smaller. People start hating on you. So remember, Tommy was at his peak back then. You know what I mean? So you're going to get a lot of heat. You know, it's easier for humans. I've noticed this over my career. It's easier for humans to try to drag you down to their level where they're at than them work harder, try harder, sacrifice more to get where you are.
I couldn't agree more.
Would you agree or disagree?
No, I agree. But one of the things I've noticed, because I think about this a lot, in the horse business and other business ventures that I've gone into, I'm always amazed sometimes when somebody like our great friend Doug Carpenter takes an interest in you and really wants to help you. And I've had so many people do that. And I finally figured out what it is, because I'd like to think I'm in a position now where I can be of aid to somebody. They see something of themselves in you.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about that, call it the eye of the tiger or whatever, but when you see somebody that's determined that they're going to make it and it doesn't matter what has to happen, they're going to do it anyway. I think those really successful people, they see that and they're like, I know that. Most people don't have it. It's like you said, they come up wanting to know, well, how many days off do I get?
Yeah.
And do I get paid extra for this? And that's why I tell, like, my youngest daughter who's about to go off to college and she's going to do great in life. Because I'm like, do you know how rare an honest, hardworking, diligent employee that thinks like a business owner is? Like, she shot to the top. She's made manager of every Joe job she's ever had.
Did you see that TikTok video I put out a couple of months ago where people were ripping on me for when I said in a podcast, I said, if people would just stay off their phone for 8 hours a day and just, did you watch that podcast? Yeah. It got 750,000 views in 48 hours. Over 2,000 comments. Is that just getting people to show up, stay off their phone and just give you 8 hours is like the holy grail. Now, to us in old school, that's like not even, you're not even working a day until you've done 12 hours. A day doesn't even start until 12 hours get done. You start getting to 14, 16 hours a day, okay, now you're starting to work a little hard. Does that make sense? You're absolutely right, Steve.
It does, but I'm at a point in my life where I don't want to work that hard anymore.
No, but you don't have to now because you've already did it.
That's true.
You already did it.
I did too much.
I tell the academy students every year at graduation, I say, here's your deal. Pick your fucking poison. To me, life is really this simple to me. You either work your ass off the first half, work your ass off, build your career, save your money, invest your money, be smart, and then have fun the second half of your life, or piss off the first half of your life, drink, party, whatever the hell you want to do, you do it. And when you get to about 45, you realize you have no savings, you have no retirement, you have nothing. And here's the deal. You'll just have to work to the day you drop dead. My sound engineer has been with me almost close to 20 years on tour now. His parents are in their late 70s, and this guy's a hard-working, go-getting motherfucker. And he said, Clinton, my parents are in their late 70s, and he said they live in a single-wide trailer. And he said they both have minimum paid jobs, and he said they both have to work every day, like 6 days a week. And I said, why are they working at that age? He said, because they pissed away the first 35 years. They smoked a lot of pot, they fucking partied, they fucked. He said they did everything. They were just a bunch of hippies. And he said, when they got to about 45, 50, they realized they got nothing. They literally lived from paycheck to paycheck. So you either pay now, okay, and play later, or you play first, play now, and you pay later. I really think you have to pick a team. Do you think I'm full of shit? What's your opinion?
No, you're exactly right. And anymore, to me, it's broken down into people that have a victim mentality or an achiever mentality. Yeah. The achievers, they don't get, like, one thing, I don't know about you, Clinton, but one thing I cannot tolerate are excuse makers. Like, there's always an excuse if you want to look for it. I try not to make them for myself or allow them in our business.
Ian Francis, you've met Ian before.
Oh, sure.
His famous saying, and it's at the bottom of every one of my emails, and I live my life by this saying. It's on my emails. He says, if you want something bad enough, you'll find a way, and if you don't, you'll find an excuse. That's really what you just said. If you want something bad enough, you will find a way.
That's exactly right, and I believe that. And, I've had a lot of luck in my career, but I've found out you get lucky the more you're working toward a specific goal. And it sounds so cliched and so motivational speech, but it's not. You got to have a vision. And
luck is when hard work and opportunity find each other.
Exactly.
And usually opportunity finds people work hard. I've met very few people where opportunity finds people who don't work very hard. There are some people out there like that, but as a general rule, the more harder you work, the better opportunities you find. So you leave Tommy's and well, actually, I tell you what, we're going to take a break now, freshen up a cocktail. We're going to pick up after this break. You leave Tommy to go to the next chapter of your life. I want to know why, when, and how, and all that kind of stuff. When it comes to horse trailers, the only brand that I use from now on is Elite. I've had every other brand over the last 25 years, and honestly, the one I keep coming back to is Elite because they last, they don't break, and they're heavy duty. Yes, are they a little more expensive? Absolutely. But you get what you pay for. If you want cheap, you're going to get cheap. If you want something well built, it's going to cost a little more money. The dealer that I use now, Jason Ducharme, out of Oklahoma, the last 4 trailers I bought, I've price shopped him with 5 other dealers. He has absolutely smoked them on price, has not even got close to Jason's price. I even bid his trailers out against cheaper brands that I know are going to be a cheaper trailer. He still beat their prices. So if you're looking for a new Elite trailer or you want to trade a trailer or buy a used one, get a hold of Jason, call him, text him. What's it worth the phone call? I promise you there will not be a dealer in the country that will beat his price. Mention that you watched the Uncut and Real Raw podcast for an additional savings.
Are you tired of worrying about the safety and comfort of your horses and livestock while you're on the road? Look no further than Oklahoma Trailer Ranch, the premier choice for hauling your precious cargo with unmatched reliability. Don't settle for anything less than the best when it comes to your trailers. For all your horse trailer needs, stock trailers, living quarters, contact Jason Ducharme at the Oklahoma Trailer Ranch, where we sell Elite, Logan, and Galleon products for any of your hauling needs. Mention Clinton's Uncut Real and Raw podcast and get the very best pricing. Jason will not be undersold by any dealer. Call him now at 248-459-2010. And remember, Jason Ducharme will not be undersold.
So Steve, you worked for Tommy for a year. Where was your next job after that?
Got a job in, of all places, Elkhorn, Nebraska, working for a guy named Wayne Jordan. And Wayne was a great guy, and it was perfect for me because Wayne, at that point in his career, didn't like to ride a lot.
Pleasure horses? What was he training?
Pleasure, halter, roping, you name it. And he had good horses, and he kind of said, I need a guy to go show. Actually, I was supposed to go up there temporarily. It was a favor of Tommy. Tommy's like...
So he's a customer of Tommy's?
No, he's a horse trainer, but he judged a lot of shows, and Tommy didn't miss many angles.
He covered every angle,
He's calling me every day, asking me if I know somebody that can come up here and ride and show. And Tommy came to me and said, would you go up there for 6 months, help him out? You got a job when you're waiting back here. And I said, are you trying to get rid of me like you did that girl? He goes, no. I mean,
you're onto him.
This will be a big favor. And I got up there and loved it. I'd never had somebody just turn me loose with show horses before. And I was doing really well. And so I called Tommy and said, look, I think I got something going on here. All that had happened with Tommy, I didn't really know to be
Yeah.
going back for. I wanted to go out there. I thought at the time, you got to win horse shows. Here's my chance to do it. I did. I worked for Wayne for a couple of years. It was a great experience, but riding those pleasure horses, and I had a lot of success
What year would
at
this
it.
be?
85.
Okay.
85 and 86. And I was winning a lot at it, but the pleasure was starting to really get big then. And it seemed to me like the point of it was, how much can I take away from and diminish this horse's natural inclination to make him just a completely submissive thing.
Yes.
And then over here you had Reining, which was still kind of in its infancy. But that seemed to be like the hardest thing in the world to do, but this brings out the most of a horse's natural God-given ability.
Right.
And as a guy that, like you, I'm always trying to just crack the horse code, the puzzle.
Yeah.
And Reining is the hardest Sunday crossword puzzle that there is. And that's why I still love it, because you'll never get it. You get it, and then somebody's
just when
figured
you
out a
think you
better
gotta
way to
figure
do
it
it.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I love it, and I made a decision then, same kind of thing. I'm going to just be a reining horse trainer.
So that was after 2 years of working there.
Yeah.
So where'd you go then?
Doug Milholland out in Kearney,
Now
Nebraska.
this would have been, so we're talking
87 to 90.
So he would have been getting big then, wouldn't he? Because he won the futurity in 1989 and silver anniversary. Well, that might have been 1990. Yeah. Was he getting pretty big in those days?
Oh, yeah.
So it would have been him and Loomis dominating, correct? Him, Loomis, and Bill Horn.
That
Were
was
they
the big
three?
three. And I was going to go to work for one of those three. I honestly didn't think I could live Bill's lifestyle at the time. That would have been great. Everybody wanted to work for Bill because you got to wreck trucks and drink whiskey and go fast and wear wire tie downs and use Crockett grazing bits. But like Doug, I was a little more analytical. I thought Doug's approach. And every year I worked for Doug, he was first or second at the Reining Futurity. Always had 3 in the finals. He was the guy at the time. And
was he in Nebraska still, or he moved down to Oklahoma?
He didn't do that till after I left.
Okay.
And
so you went. How'd you get a job with him?
the same way, I had to try out because I wasn't a reining horse guy.
So you walked up and said, "I want to come for a week." What'd you do?
I talked to him, and he said, "You know, that was when everybody." Every foreigner, everybody wanted to work there.
Yeah.
Like, or
So
Loomis.
reining in the 80s would have been booming. Booming, like wouldn't have Chasey and all those guys in Italy been buying up a bunch of horses in the 80s, correct?
They were in, but there were a handful of guys that could make a living just training reining horses.
Right. So would have been Loomis, who else?
Doug, Bob, BH, you know, just Rocky Dare.
Yeah.
Guy Gauthier.
Yeah.
Paul Horn, obviously.
Yeah.
There were a few of them, but a lot of them still had take pleasure horses and
do a little bit of everything to get by.
You know, Doug still did the first year I was there, and after that,
yeah,
we had nothing but reining horses. But he understood a horse. Like, he had a great Monty Foreman background. Like, the reason he hired me is I could change leads on a horse and knew why.
Do you ever know much about that Monty Foreman?
Not really, just what Doug told me.
From what I've studied on him, he was way ahead of his time.
So far ahead.
Way ahead of his time. I don't think the guy ever quite got the credit for his horsemanship that he should have. The books that I've read and the videos, I've seen some old videos of him training in the 60s and 70s and shit, and I think he was a visionary. He was way ahead of his time. From what I understand, I don't think he had the best bedside manner. You know, he wasn't a real good people person, so that turned a lot of people off. But as a horseman, he was way ahead of his time. And from what I remember and what I read, I think he got pretty bitter about that when he died, that he didn't quite get the credit he deserved. But he was, from what I've researched I've done on him, he was a hell of a horseman.
He was a great hand.
I did not know Doug came from that program.
Yeah.
How did Doug get associated with him? Do you know?
Grew up out there on the western slope. Still made us ride those balanced ride saddles with that ball bearings in the stirrup leather, so they'd.
So
fling
Doug
you
would
off.
be a good person to maybe interview for Monty, because I don't, you know, a lot of those people are dead now. You know what I mean? And there's not a lot out on him. I might contact Doug and see if he wants to be on the podcast. Might be a bit of rank for Doug, but see if I can get him to talk about Monty Foreman, because it's got my curiosity. What made that guy ahead of the curve?
He'd love to talk to you about it. To me, it was that he understood horses had a thought process and he had a training process. Like, a lot of the Western trainers I grew up were cavemen.
Yeah.
Like, you do it because I said you do it. It was all just like football coaches were for human athletes then. It was all about toughness and discipline. There wasn't any teaching or you feel good about it. The great trainers now, they're just coaches. You know, they understand how to motivate a horse to do it. They understand, like Doug did, that he learned from Monty, that I can teach a horse a series of signals, and then I can motivate him to do whatever I want using those signals. Like, you know, that's why I said, like, it was an analytical approach to lead change and turnaround and all that. Maybe wasn't 100% right, but at the time,
it was ahead of its game.
Light years ahead of everybody.
What made Doug's horses back in those years look better than the rest of them?
He didn't break the egg. Like, you know, and I sent Doug a note last week. We have a really good little mare that it's taken me a couple years to get trained, but my wife won 12,000 on her 2 weeks ago. Yeah. And I wouldn't have got her trained if I hadn't learned what I'd learned from Doug about being patient, training mares differently than studs and geldings. Yeah. Doug would just, like, same thing with BH. Both of them would always trust their training process. And if it didn't happen today, they'd just rack them up and go try it again tomorrow. And then those horses for both those guys, like it would happen with Doug, those 3-year-olds that he'd do well at the fraternity on, a month out, there's no way they're even going to smell the finals.
You're shitting.
No.
A month out.
They were too green and it wasn't coming together. And you'd go see some of these other guys, and they're spinning and stopping and tearing up dirt.
Smoking it.
Oh, my gosh. And then they'd fall apart, and Doug's would come together. And he'd go 217.5 first go, 217.5 second go, 220-something in the finals, and win it or be second.
Yeah.
And he'd do it over and over again. He set a clock in his head. He trusted his training. He didn't overschool at the horse shows. Then most of the reiners, most of them got wrecked in the first go-round.
Because of speed?
Well, the training wasn't great then, and everybody was trying to do their training the night before, the minute before. Like, I laugh when I go to the Reining now. People just walk around in the warm-up pen and go show. Yeah. Back then, you had to have your head on a swivel because somebody was going to knock the announcer stand over, and that was just accepted.
Like, they were training like they were at home.
Yeah, like, we're going. Like, the world has changed a lot, and for the better in that regard. Yeah. But Doug, funny. Loomis, those guys were different. They knew what they were doing. And like BH always said, I ride my horse once a day at home. Why am I doing different at the horse show? And I don't ride in the middle of the night. Yeah. You know, he just did what he did.
Yeah. Do you agree there's a lot to be said that if they're not going to get them trained 6 days a week, they're just not going to get trained anyway?
I believe that.
So there's no point riding them 2 or 3 times a day. Yeah, sure. There's times when they're being a bit of a shithead where you might need to knock the dick in the dirt for 2 times a day for 3 or 4 days to get them humble enough to where, okay, a stud colt, okay, I want to come out and do my job. But reality is the competition's so tough now. If 6 days a week consistently doesn't work, it ain't going to work, is it?
No. And I always bought into Loomis's 5-day-a-week program. Yeah. I ride my Monday through Friday. Yep. And if they need a little extra, like you said, they'll get ridden on Saturday, but they always get Sunday off. Yes. And it's a mental break. They don't stand in the stall. They get turned out. Mm-hmm. Heard you mention the spa. We like those too, but they get away from it, just like we do. And it's something I've noticed. Like, we get one of those giant beach balls for the horses. I throw it out in the round pen. Those horses play. Yeah. And have so much fun. And for a long time, I never thought of a horse that way. Yeah. They got a job to do. But if you can let them go have fun, kick up their heels, they approach their job better Monday morning.
Tell me, what were the top 1 or 2 things that you would say how long did you work for Doug?
Almost 4 years.
Okay. So did you get to do some showing there too?
Quite a bit, okay.
What were the best, top 3 takeaways you took from his program that you really said? To me, every trainer, good or bad trainer, every trainer in the world has one thing they do better than everybody else. They got one thing that I'm going to take that. Oh, and I'm going to take this from Steve, and I'm going to take that from Avila. You get what I'm saying? Oh, yeah. What was the one thing that you said, if I had to walk away from this 4 years, I'm never going to forget this one thing and take this one bit of magic from Milholland? What would it be?
I'll never forget it. Second year I worked for him, we had a gelding 3-year-old by this horse named Howdy Maybe that Doug had won the Derby on. who was just a ranch horse. A guy there from Kearney, Nebraska, sent him to get a handle on. It's one of the greatest stoppers that ever lived to this day. Just freak thing.
Were you there when I'd Be a Princess was trained?
Oh yeah, I rode her.
You
I'll
did?
tell you that story.
I'd love to hear that because
that
I
was
owned
great.
her. I owned her, and obviously I owned her daughter, Princess and Diamonds, NRHA Hall of Fame mare, produced over 1 million. But I was just going to say, because Princess was third in the 1989, and I'm doing the numbers in my head, it's like, fuck, you would have been there.
Oh, I was there. That's a great story. I'm riding her. She was by a son of Mr. Impressive.
That's right, she was, wasn't she? Big old jaw on her. Remember
Yeah.
that? She had a big old halter horse ass on a big old halter horse jaw.
And out of not a Watch Joe Jack mare, but one of those
Something like
picture
that.
bred.
Yep.
It was a Two-Eyed Jack. Nothing
Yes,
to
it
do with
was.
Hollywood Jack. So Gay Owens, who owned her, owned
That's
the
right.
sire. And that was a good Mr. Impressive horse. That I'd Be Impressive horse.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense. That horse won the all-around the honor roll in the Western Riding, and she did everything. Anyway, she had this crazy idea that one of hers, by that stud, would make a reining horse, and she lived there in Nebraska. And of course, Doug was kind of like, he had all Topsail Codys and Hollywood Jacks by then. He was like, "We'll put her in Steve's string," and that was like my 3rd year there. So I'm riding her. And
You
it's
get
like,
her as a 2-year-old?
yeah, and it's like March of her 3-year-old year, and Doug hadn't ridden her yet. And this lady, Gay, that owned her, came out to watch her ride. And Doug's like, "Hey, I got to ride that bay filly. Anything I need to know about her?" Like, I'm telling you, this is the best 3-year-old you got in the barn. And he's like,
Has he not seen her every day?
I kind of, but I would hide her because I was thinking I was going to get to shore in
So
the
he was going to
limited.
steal her from
I
you.
knew the owner, like, he hates her. She's ill-bred, you know. This will be mine.
Yeah.
Because I started to tell that story
You're
before,
riding
but-
her at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Or when he wasn't there, you know, I knew when he'd go to lunch and I'd get her out and we'd
Yeah.
see how far she could stop. And assistant trainer, so that mare could stop a mile.
Yeah.
And you would try that kind of stuff out back then. We weren't afraid. Like, well, see how far she can go. And we would measure it, you know.
That's funny.
But he's like, "Well, I got a rider for this lady." I said, "It's a good one." And so he takes her out. He's out there on the track for about 45 minutes. I don't hear a thing. And he comes back in the alleyway, and he's
He's riding her the day before Gay shows up?
No, he ride her when
Gay's there. So he
rode
don't ride her the day
and never
before. He
ridden
just
her.
wings it, jumps on her, customers there, hopes for the best.
Yeah. Comes back in the barn. He's just beaming. He's like, "This is the best 3-year-old we've got in the barn." I'm like, "No kidding." I never stepped on her again. That was
Son of a
it. The
bitch.
rest is history.
Yeah.
He sold her to Harold Lepler from Brewster, New York, for $25,000, which at the time was a pile. Sold Rest Stop to Mark Wagman for $7,500.
Yeah.
Mark Wagman still brings that up. He's so proud of that.
Yeah.
But that was a lot. When he won the fraternity on Silver Anniversary, we sold her for $25,000. Can you imagine a gray mare that won the NRHA fraternity now? $25,000, and we thought we'd hit a home run.
Yeah.
The horse reiners weren't valued then. They were a novelty.
Well, you know, even Troy Compton said when he was here, he said the reiners for a long time were looked down upon. They were like the poor guys. They were like the redneck horse trainers.
They were.
They were poor. They were Red Wing boots. I mean, they weren't the prestige they are today.
I remember asking Tommy when I worked for him, like, "Why don't you ride reiners? You won the reining fraternity." He's like, "There's just no money in it. You know, I can have the best one in America here, and it's $7,500.
Yeah.
And he goes, "These halter horses bring 6 figures. I'm going to do that. It's business." You know?
So Gay sold I'd Be Impressive?
Sold I'd Be a Princess to Harold.
I'd Be a Princess, sorry.
Yeah, daughter showed her for a year or two. and then
Because I bought her from Gay.
Well,
so
Gay
Gay
bought
must
her-
have got her
she
back.
bought her
then.
back.
She must have got her back because I bought the mother. The story on that is I bought Princess and Diamonds as a 2-year-old. I'll never forget this. June of a 2-year-old year. Hadn't been started. End of June. She had a big old scar on her back about that long. Seriously, 2 feet long, all through a rib cage. She got hung up in a fence as a weanling. Massive big scar down the side. End of June, I did a clinic in Michigan. I don't know how I met Gay. Maybe Gay came to a clinic. I don't know. She's the nicest lady in the world. And somehow she said, "Come see my reiners. I got some sale." She must have been hunting some money. Princess and Diamonds was 2-year-old, not started. I was poor as hell. And I think she wanted 10 grand for her. And I said, "I'll give you 7,500. That's all I got. Seriously. Like, that's it." Talked her into it. She gave it to me. She, sold it to me for 7,500. And then I went back 6 months later and got the mother. And I think I don't know how I got the money for that, but I did. And, obviously the rest is history of Princess. I rode her for 6 months. She caught up all the other 2-year-olds, Princess and Diamonds, in 6 months. I rode her from July 1st to the futurity. And I only rode her 4 days a week because I had to do clinics Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I rode her Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then I flew out Friday. So I only rode her 4 days a week. She caught up in less than 6 months to all the other 2-year-olds. Natural, big stopper, just phenomenal, best horse I ever rode at that point. I never forget this. I called Bergen up because back in those days, Bergen was the man.
Sure.
Bergen didn't really want a mare, especially a shiner mare, so he passed on her. Crawford was up and coming in the Reining and doing really well. I think he was first and second in the USET the year before. Remember that horse?
Oh,
The
yeah.
two was first and second. And Crawford said, sure, I'll look at her at the futurity. I took her to Crawford, rode around at 3 o'clock in the morning for him. He said, great, I'll take her. And the rest is history. You know, he only showed her twice, won 80 grand. She had an injury after that, but she won 80 grand. And after that, you know, she $1 million later and one of the greatest NRHA producing mares. But that's how that started with I'd Be a Princess. And you know, it's funny about I'd Be a Princess. I bred her for 7 or 8 years at least and got 3 or 4 embryos out of her. No, I got 2 embryos a year out of her. I'll never forget this. That mare was like clockwork breeding. Every year, one of the ones she had was a complete turd. I mean, bad-minded, impressive, just a fucking turd. And one was really good. Every year. You just had to take a pick. Which one of you little assholes is going to be the good one? And you could breed them any way you wanted. And every year it was one acted like a dirty, shitty halter horse, and one of them acted like a reiner. Princess and Diamonds, I got 4 foals a year out of her on average over her whole career. I think she had 26 foals in total. This is all before ICSI and all that shit now, okay? Every year without fail, she had one phenomenal horse. The next one was a damn good one. The next one was average, and the next one was a turd. Like clockwork. That mare every year. One was a turd, one was average, one was pretty damn good, and one was just knock it out of the park. Yeah. Every friggin' year for 15 years, that mare bred 4 foals a year, and you could count on them how they were going to be done.
She did her share of the heavy lifting.
Oh,
though.
she did. She certainly did. So, okay, so Doug shows the mare. You don't get to show her.
I don't get to show her again. The big takeaway I had from Doug, you asked me, was that second year I worked for him, I talked him into letting me show this gelding at the futurity. And back then, you had 2 go-rounds, and then you had limited finals on Friday night and open finals on Saturday night. That was all they had.
Yeah.
And so I somehow got through the go-rounds, and I made the limited finals. And I'm out there warming up, and I'm so nervous. Like, I'd shown maybe a half a dozen times in Reining in my whole life. And here I am, Oklahoma City, futurity finals. It's at night. There's a lot of people there.
Yeah.
And Doug comes over, and he puts his hand on my, he's like, how you doing? I'm like, he goes, are you nervous? And I'm trying to lie. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty nervous. And he goes, okay, you got to learn this. He goes, that's a great thing. He said, you should just take those butterflies and feel like, if this didn't matter to me, I wouldn't feel this way right now. But this is not something you have to do. This is something you get to do, and you need to just embrace it and go in there and have fun. And it's like the weight of the world came off my shoulders. Awesome. And he gave me permission to go in there and have fun. I didn't win anything, but it was still a great night. And that little, you don't have to do this, you get to do this.
And there was no pressure if you didn't win.
No.
If you came out, you didn't lose your job.
Right.
Nothing I hate more than showing a horse for an owner. And you already beat yourself up if you don't do well. You're already upset that you didn't, get maybe the score you wanted. And the last thing you need is a chewing of somebody's ass at the gate, or, the text, why'd you fuck up? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? You're already beating yourself up. So there's a lot to be said about, having that pressure to where there's no pressure there.
And I tell trainers all the time, that's why you need to take ownership. If you want to compete successfully, you'll do better with your own horse than you will an owner's horse, because those expectations can be soul-crushing. Yeah.
Overwhelming, yeah.
Their hearts thunder for us. Their flesh and bone pushed to lift us higher, carry us faster, and stop on a dime. And when they've had a great ride, they deserve a great recovery. They deserve a cold creek. Cold Creek Spas offer state-of-the-art 35-degree aerated saltwater therapy, proven to reduce injury, speed recovery, and keep them at peak performance. Cold Creek Therapeutic Spas. This water is for winners.
Want to get your brand noticed? Advertising opportunities now available, including title sponsorship and episode sponsorships. The Uncut and Real Raw podcast is among the top 1% of podcasts in the nation, with nearly 1 million downloads. Join our winning team and come along for the ride. Email social@uncutandrealraw.com for more information.
See Clinton Anderson and his Down Under horsemanship method live. Order tickets now for the Walkabout Tour in Memphis, Tennessee on March 15th and 16th, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania on July 12th and 13th, Waterloo, Iowa on September 6th and 7th, and Buckeye, Arizona on December 13th and 14th. For ticket information, visit downunderhorsemanship.com.
Top 3 takeaways from Milholland again?
It's a get to, not a have to, is my big one. You can't train a horse any faster than they're going to get trained. Don't force the issue. And just always look for a better method to train a horse instead of just forcing it harder, which is kind of what, growing up, that was kind of the way we did it.
Yeah.
You know, if they don't want to do it, we'll just make them do it.
Yeah.
And Doug would figure out a way to get them to want to do it.
I'm going to ask this question, and if you don't feel comfortable answering it, I completely understand, and if we need to cut this out of the podcast, we'll cut it out too, okay? I have the utmost respect for Doug, so I want to make this very clear with what I'm about to say. I respect the man a lot, done a lot in his career, and I have the utmost respect for him. I've never asked him this, but I wanted to ask him, and maybe you know the answer, and maybe you don't. When he was at the peak of his game, 1990, 1991, I think he won it in 91 as well, didn't he? Or he's reserve.
Won it on Silver Anniversary and then was reserve the next year on Khaki Jack, maybe. One of those good Hollywood Jack mares.
And then he was reserve, I think, in 1992 when Boomernick came in. And Boomernick changed everything because Doug had the big old East Coast style, nose out, neck up, kind of a refined BH, wouldn't you say, Bill Horn? Like Bill Horn was wild and big loose rein, and I would have said Doug was refined and polished, but still loose rein. Would you agree or disagree?
Put him and Craig Johnson.
Yes, very much. Very, very polished and smooth.
Sure.
Not too
Correct.
Western. Very correct. May not have been dynamic, but correct and smooth. When Boomernick came in and wowed everybody in 1992, that to me, from the outside looking in, was the demise of Doug. Because his horses after that were never, in my opinion, very competitive. Over time. And I often wondered why he didn't make that change, because everybody else made that change with getting them bridled up, learning more about collection, stuff like that. And I've often wondered to know, because he was a very smart man. He was a very talented horseman. I have often wondered at different parts of people's career why they didn't make the change. Maybe he disagreed with the change. Maybe he didn't like them bridled up. Do you know the answer to that?
I sure do. Too much conviction in his own program.
Okay.
And we would talk about it then as the game really changed, and you nailed it. You know, you give Boomernick credit. I give Bob Avila all the credit because that's his horse. It was his scene.
Yes.
The next 5 years, those great horses and what he did with the training. Anyway, we'll get back to that.
Yeah.
But
Boomernick brought in collection. Boomernick brought in, it's when West Coast came to the East Coast and kicked their ass.
Well, what
That's
happened
as simple
was
as it got, isn't it?
What those guys, and that was a little confab of Brett, Bob Avila, obviously, Todd, John, Crystal McNutt, Andrea, throw that whole Brian Bell, that whole little brain trust in there. They brought better horses than we'd ever seen.
Yeah.
Because when we're all riding Workman's Joes, no offense, and they show up with a Docalina, it's not fair.
Yeah.
They outhorsed us. But then the thing they figured out is, now we got all this horsepower, how do we contain it? And I credit Bob Avila combining what he learned from the pleasure horse world and really being able to get a horse's whole body contained and not just overpowering him with a big spade bit.
Yeah, it was body control.
Yeah.
It was collection.
Todd Bergen told me when he worked for Bob, he would ride those 2-year-olds in a snaffle. That was the rule, nothing but a smooth snaffle. And Bob would get on, he'd want to check their hip, their rib cage, their shoulders, and their pole. Until all those were just right, you don't get to go to a bridle.
Yeah.
Like, it's all got to be done.
Yeah.
And Todd said that was the message that he left with. But what they did was they took all that horsepower and they figured out a way to contain it. Because so much of the training back up till that point was just kind of running a bluff on those horses. Like, we don't change leads on them, or they might know it's coming.
Yeah.
And we want the element of surprise.
Yeah.
What, Boomerneck with Brett and before that with Bob and all those other guys did was they trained a horse in a way that allowed them to get repeatable results. And they could make multiple big runs on those horses because they had them. Instead of just trying to feather them through that lead change, they could lift up, capture their chin, lay their legs, step them over. It's no problem.
Do you think, and again, I do want to be very clear what I'm coming from. This is not derogatory against Doug at all. He's a hell of a horseman. Do you think Doug or the East Coast guys were offended by that West Coast horsemanship?
Oh, yeah, they all were. Doug wasn't. Doug didn't like big bits and feeling like you were dominating a horse trainer. Look, the game changed. And his game didn't fit the new game as well. Like, he still progressed as a horseman. I would talk to him at the time, and he'd be like, I'm not riding.
Did he realize it was changing?
Yeah.
Yeah, he knew it was changing.
And he's like, I'm not riding a horse in a cathedral in a wire curb strap. I'm just not doing it, and I don't like what they're doing to those horses. And you know what? To his credit, just like in politics and horse training, the pendulum always swings too far one way.
Of course it does.
And then it'll swing back the other way. And he's a man of conviction.
And I can respect that.
Yeah,
I don't
am
hold that
too.
against him.
And a lot of us were like, hey, you could change a little bit and stay current. And I'm not criticizing him because I respect the guy more than anybody. But I would just say he's no different than anybody else. It was prominent because he had so much success up till that point.
Yeah.
But then the game just changed.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to say he didn't change with it. That's the truth. But I don't want that to come off sounding critical.
No, it's not critical. But
him and everybody
But there was a
else.
big change right then.
Yeah.
And he was right at the peak of that. It wasn't even, I'm not even going to say him. It was the East Coast style. The East Coast style was big loose rein, nose out, guide them off a neck rein, run down their stop. They'd kind of stifle stop a little bit. They'd fucking slide 45 feet, go forever. And then West Coast came in, break in the back, put their hind feet up in front of their friggin' front feet going down, sliding. They'll stop in 6-inch deep dirt. They've broken the pole, they've broken the withers. And I'm not saying some of those spade bits and wire chin straps didn't happen. Of course it did. But I don't think it happened anywhere near to the level that people think to get them to do that. They just got them broke like that.
Yeah, the horses were better, and they'd learned from the bridle horse guys.
Yeah.
That you got to be able to contain
Tommy
all that.
Manion said all the best horses in his early part of his career always came from the West Coast.
They always,
because I always said,
because
he said we'd go to California and buy horses, and I kept saying, why California? He just said they were just so much more advanced. He said they were so much more ahead of us. Yeah. And I asked him why, and he said, I can't really tell you. No, that's a little bit of a lie. He did tell me this. Tommy said in the West Coast, they valued older horses. They valued 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old horses. They didn't try to get them trained in 2 years. They valued showing them when they were ready to be shown. He said back in those days, we might not show them till they're 5, until they were ready to be shown. So he said they just had better horsemanship. They had better breeding and better horsemanship. And people on the East Coast might get pissed about it, but it is what it is. No,
he's right. And all the innovation in terms of equipment, training, breeding, all came from California East, which is where Doc Barr came from, And I will say this, I'll disagree with you a little bit. Mm-hmm. If you look back at some of those old pictures of Doug and he won the Futurity or won the Derby on Howdy Maybe in 1982, remember they did an article in the Quarter Horse Journal on him. He's riding that horse in a snaffle and a drop noseband. It looked like somebody schooling a dressage horse. Yeah. And that's where he appealed to me. It was way different than what BH and those guys from back east were doing.
Very much so. He was ahead of his time for that East Coast kind of style. But reality is you either evolve or you don't. I remember, I never forget this quote from Carol Rose. You can love Carol, hate her guts, but she was very successful at breeding horses, okay? And one thing I never forget she told me is she said, you can, if you like purple horses, but the public want orange horses, you can keep breeding purple horses, but you're going to have a pasture full of purple horses. If the public want orange, even if you think orange horses are worse, even if you think orange horses shouldn't be bred, you better breed what the public want to buy if you're going to stay in business. Because otherwise, you're just going to have a pasture full of purple horses that you're going to own. So the same thing with training horses. You either evolve or you don't. And, you know, a lot of people that I've interviewed here on the podcast, they got out of the pleasure horse game after all those years because it evolved to where they didn't like it.
Yep.
And I respect that. They didn't like the way the horses moved. They didn't like how they were being trained, so they got out of it. They went to other disciplines. So I don't hold that against them, and I don't hold it against people that want to stay in it either. It's each to their own, okay? But reality is you better evolve or you're going to get left behind.
In any business.
In any business. It's doing business. It's doing anything. You've got to look where things are going to be 5 years from now. You see, if you would have told me 10 years ago, Steve, that people would buy horses on the internet in an internet sale, like Melanie Smith and Solo Select. 10 years ago, if you would have said, people are going to pay $100,000 for a horse, they're never going to see it, they're never going to ride it, never going to get their eyes on it, they're going to see a video, and they're going to see some photos, and they might have their vet check some x-rays on a website, and they'll give $100,000, I'll say, you're a fucking idiot. There's no way that is going to happen. Maybe a $5,000 horse, but not a $100,000 one. Nobody's going to pay that and not see or physically touch or ride the horse. What a fool I am. They do it now more than ever.
Yeah.
They do it now more than ever, isn't it? Would you have predicted that 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, or not? That people would give big money for horses and not even touch it? Because traditional horse selling has been you show up, you touch it, you ride it, you x-ray it, you talk to the trainer rides it. That's how it's been done for what? 50 years?
It is, but I had an aha moment about 25, about 2000. Mm-hmm. I put a horse on dreamhorse.com.
Okay.
That was one of the new websites.
Yep.
Reject cutter, and got sold him for $15,000, which is pretty good money for a little project horse to a girl in Washington. And I couldn't believe it. I thought it was I said, you're going to tell me you bought this horse for $15,000 just off the pictures and the little video I made, and you're good with me putting him on a truck? And, oh, yeah, that's how I buy all my horses. And I'm like, really? She said, yeah, I bought 2 more mares to breed to him today. And I realized they were starting doing it. And I remember the first time in our business, the first time we sold a horse just off Facebook. I remember, like, we advertised the horse on Facebook. They messaged us on Facebook Messenger. I sent them the wiring instructions via Messenger, and they paid for him. Like, all done, never spoke to him. They never saw it. So it's what people are comfortable with. Guys and girls from our generation aren't. I'm like you, and just how you described. I want to see them, feel them, touch them. It's part of the buying experience that attracts me, but a lot of people aren't.
I've got a 2-year-old right now that didn't make it for an open cow horse. Really a nice colt, though. Very good-minded. Going to make a great horse for somebody, but just kind of lacked that level 4 open quality. I did a video on him. He's broke to death, drags his ass, turns around, broke to death, and I put him in Solo Select sale, Melanie's sale, and I said, have you had a lot of interest in that sale? And she said, oh, a ton. A lot of people have called on that colt of yours. And I said, well, that's good. Hopefully somebody will buy him that colt. And she said, no, they won't. And I said, what do you mean? She said, nobody that ever called on this colt will buy it. And I said, what do you mean? She said, Clinton, you'll be shocked at how many people buy really expensive horses that never call me, never ask, never do any due diligence. They'll just buy it. She said, the people that call you 8 times, ask every question under the sun, they won't bid on that horse.
She's exactly, that was
that
my
shocked
experience.
Me. That blew my mind.
When I was in the 2-year-old business, and our business was to produce high-selling 2-year-olds at the Reining and the cow horse sale. So shocked how many times we'd get through selling one and somebody I'd never met before walked up. I love that colt. Is he nice? I'm like, what about the 8 people that have pitched a tent at my stall all week? And every time he came out, and can we look at the x-rays again? And is there any way we're going to be able to buy him? We only have 60,000 or whatever it was. And they, you know, you'd look around, they'd sit there and watch him sell, never raise their hand. And somebody from the back who'd just gotten in a fight with his wife and needed to make her happy.
Pussy always wins. I always say it. That's funny. Righto, so moving on from Doug, what happened after Doug? Where'd you go then? 4 years for Doug.
Right. I got tired of being cold, and I wanted to move back to Texas.
Did you guys even have an indoor in Nebraska?
Oh, yeah, but it was so cold.
Yeah.
I mean,
how big would that indoor be?
Huge.
Oh, yeah?
His indoor was massive.
Yeah.
And it's still there. And the ground was great. Like we had 42
Like
stalls.
back in those days, huge would have been 100 by 200, correct? Back in those days.
It was bigger than that.
Oh, truly, that would have been huge.
It was narrow, but it was long. It was like
300
it
long.
Might have, I think it was 300.
See, that would have been huge because
Oh, it was
back in
great.
those late 80s, 100 by 200 was a big indoor, wasn't it? Back in those days,
Sean Flaherty won the Futurity with a 50 by 80.
Yeah.
Riding
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah.
With shavings and hay stacked in one end of
Yeah.
it. I always
Yeah.
gave him a hard time.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't even that big, Sean.
Yeah.
You know, but things have changed in arms race. I wanted to get back to Texas. I realized I bought a little place in Stephenville that I horse traded my way into. And I just realized, here I am, I've worked my whole life for this. I looked around at all the trainers with a barn full of horses that were working themselves to death and were just broke.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not going to do that. And so I had a real kind of moment of epiphany or whatever where I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to
die broke.
I'm not going to die broke, and I'm not going to, having a barn full of training horses and non-pros looked to me like a really low-paying job.
With a lot of stress.
With a lot of stress and a lot of bosses.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that defeats the I want to work for myself thing. So, you know, I saw an opportunity since I wasn't known. You know, I was an assistant trainer, but I was a nobody. I didn't have a lot of resources. And at the time, the 2-year-olds had started bringing like 40, 50,000 at the 2-year-old sale at the Reining Futurity. So I thought maybe that's an opportunity for me. And it turned out it was. But I spent a year figuring that game out before I pushed any money onto the table to play it. And
what'd you figure out about that?
well, I went at it from a really analytical point of view, a business point of view, and I did exactly what you're talking about with Carol's analogy. I used the Joe Dirt analogy. It ain't what you like, it's the consumer.
I love it. It's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, I love that movie. So I sat down and I watched the whole 2-year-old sale with a notepad, and I sat up by myself, and I just tried to notice trends. And the trend was, forget what you like, what is the public buying?
Yes.
And I do that to this day, and 99% of the people don't, Clinton. It never ceases to amaze me, and not just in the horse business, but in business. And this is one of the things I've learned from some good mentors of mine that have been not horse people. And I saw some common threads among what those $50,000 horses brought. Oh, they look like this, they're bred like this, they ride like this. And I thought to myself, to me, there was clear-cut evidence at that time that if you bring that type of horse, they will pay X amount of dollars for it. And so I started looking around, well, what do I have to get that kind of raw material as a yearling? And figured out it's going to cost about $15,000 at the time. But I thought that $35,000 difference is enough room. So I borrowed the money after I studied for a year. Andre had just won the Futurity on RR Star. So I went to Fort Worth and I bought the prettiest Leica diamond ever because the cutters weren't all over him. I gave $15,000 for him. But he was gorgeous, out of a little peppy mare that won and produced 100 in the cutting. And you could still get away with that.
That was back in the
Reining.
days when Cal-bred horses were still coming to the Reining Futurity.
And they were better horses.
Yes.
No offense to the Reiners.
Yeah.
They were better.
Yeah.
They were more
fearless,
athletic.
smarter.
They were better athletes.
Yeah.
They just were.
Yeah.
And this thing was a freak, and he was gorgeous. And I just rode him. Just rode him like I rode him. I put a humongous emphasis on marketing because I figured nobody's going to come to Stephenville, Texas to buy one from the nobody.
Yeah.
But I know the whole world's going to be at that sale. And if I do my job right, I've got a chance to make good money. And 50 was my goal. I literally poured everything into it. I'd sent all the training horses home except for a couple just to pay the overhead. I brushed that horse twice a day. I rode him. I just did everything I could do. I got a great video, hired a professional photographer. I mean, I made a list of everything I can do that'll make this horse sell. Yeah. My thing was, what's going to make me successful financially with this colt? And then I did it. And
What did he bring?
55.
That's awesome.
So I got 50 in my pocket after the commission. That horse changed my life because it made me an owner.
Yeah.
That's all I always tell people, take ownership. Don't wait for you young trainers. Nobody's going to send you that horse that you need. They might, but you might get old waiting for it to happen. Just take ownership of it. and be an owner. Most trainers, for some reason, are scared to own a horse, and if they do, they will not ride it.
Yeah.
That's always baffled me. And I found out I can make more money riding 1 or 2 of my own good 2-year-olds a year than I can riding 20 for somebody else, and I don't have to worry about keeping them happy.
It's the old famous story that you would have heard a million times of our dear friend Doug Carpenter, is when Doug changed from a horse trainer to a high-end broker like you, he walked down the barn, he had a 14-stall barn, and he walked down the barn and 12 of them were turds, and 2 of them were really great horses. And the 2 that were great horses are ones that he bought, he owned. And he went back in the house, called up all 12 owners and said, come get your horses. And I said to him, did you have a plan B? Like, you're out of income. You just sent 12 horses home. He said, no. I said, well, did you have another job? How were you going to feed your kids? He said, I didn't know, Clinton. He said, but I knew I'd figured it out.
Yep.
And he said, I just knew that I wasn't going to make any money riding these 12 average ones. And he said, that's when I knew I had to go and buy and sell my own horses. And that's what he did. From that day on, he made a fortune buying and selling his own horses rather than waiting for people to send you that good one, waiting for people to give you the next great one. Can it happen? Sure it can. There's always a fucking Seabiscuit story out there. You know what I mean? But it's hard, isn't it?
Well, look at it this way. And most of our breeders in the performance horse world are backyard breeders. They're not big we don't have giant commercial breeders, couple. And so you raise a gun of trash out of a Shiner mare that won $100,000, and it's the best one you've ever had. Who are you going to send it to? Somebody that knows how to deal with those. Casey Deary, Andrea. Like, you're not, when you've raised the horse of your lifetime, that's why those guys get all the good ones.
Yeah.
Because since we're mostly fueled by small breeders, you want to cut your odds down by sending it to somebody that's proven that they can deal with that.
They're not going to take their gamble on a young trainer. So once you hit a lick on that first one, did it give you a shot of confidence, Steve?
It did. Changed my game, changed my life, and that's all I did.
Because you were very smart that you got in the early days of selling those 2-year-old Reiners. You were on the ground floor of that.
Yep.
And I always remembered that. So how'd the next few years go doing that?
It went great because then, I felt like I had a license to steal. The Reiners weren't buried and obsessed with pedigree then. So I would buy yearling stud colts that I thought could do the reining or the cow horse. Give myself an out pitch, because the next year I had a really nice rooster colt that I loved that was gorgeous, but I didn't think he stopped enough for the reining, so I put him in the cow horse sale in Reno. He was the record high seller out there. I remember I got a standing ovation when I sold him. And so now I had 2 places to go, and I would start all those colts the same. They'd all get started on a cow, and I'd let them pick which way they went. And, it just took off from there. But I never forgot what got me there, and I never, a couple times after I'd had a lot of success and had a bunch of really good colts that had done really well at the sales and then gone on and done well after that. Yeah. They weren't hothouse flowers. I had one that was just kind of average one year, but I'm going to do fine with it because I'm Steve Ross. Everybody knows I have the good one. The public didn't buy that one.
Yeah.
I think he brought 8,500.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, it's not you. It's
horses.
Because you're bringing the right.
Do you think by that stage the public were getting a lot more educated on what was a good horse? People in the
public didn't really change. It's just that when I brought them a weak one, they jumped all over it and said, okay, we'll buy from you, Steve, but we're not going to buy junk from you.
Yeah.
The only reason we bought from you before is because you brought us what we wanted.
Yeah, the good stuff.
So I never lost track of that. Like, it's not me. It's supply the consumer with what they want.
How did you balance the amount of horses when you were rocking and rolling doing the 2-year-olds? Did you have a magic number? Hey, I stick to 10. Any more than 10, I can't do a good job. Any under 5, I can't make a living. Was there a magic balance that you found?
A handful. Less was more. I figured out what Loomis told me years ago. You can train 10 horses and break even, or you can train 100 and break more even.
Yeah.
Only you don't. You just lose more.
And more stress, more employees.
And look, here's what a horse trainer is, and everybody loses track of this. You're a custom bit and spur maker. You're a custom artist. When you're good, you only got so many you can ply your craft on, and you can't multiply yourself.
Yeah.
And you spread yourself too thin. And you know this, Clinton. This is what amazes me about our friend Andrea. Nobody ever got a horse really, really good in any discipline unless they spent
time on
him.
Yes.
And how that guy finds time to make so many horses great. Not good, great.
Because he's just a workaholic. He's an animal.
And I'm not.
Yeah.
And I always kept after I got started, I tried to keep 2 good 2-year-olds in the barn, and they were just for that. And I would take training horses, but by that point, I'm like, if it fits what I do, like I want low maintenance training horse. I'd take a Tennessee walking horse.
Yeah.
If they'd pay their bill and not come see me, like you can't come around. I don't give lessons.
Yeah.
I got a job to do. And those training customers were really happy.
Yeah.
But my focus wasn't send me a horse so I can go show it. It was just, will you pay me enough to cover my overhead on these 2-year-olds? Because all I wanted to know was make sure that I got to the end of the year and sold those well, that all that money wasn't earmarked to pay the overhead for the year.
There's a point in horse training, isn't there, in all businesses, but especially horse training, because horse training is a service business. You have to touch it to make money. I could literally triple my business overnight and honestly I might hire one more guy in the warehouse to ship shit out.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But you can't triple a horse training barn overnight and not hire triple amount of people.
Yeah.
You know, because horse training is a service business. You have to touch it. The greatest lesson I ever learned when I was 13, Gordon McKinley said, there's only so many hours in the day and with your own 2 hands to get rich.
One of the things that was the hardest thing for me to learn, and I learned a lot from watching you, was how do you scale a horse business? And I always say the horse training business model has been broken for 40 years, so don't use that one.
Yeah,
but it took me a long time to figure out how do I grow my business and not just get more work and more tired.
And more tired, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, we're going to take new tape disc for the cameras. Let's freshen up a cocktail. I want to come back and I want to know about the transition from the 2-year-olds, because you were at the peak of your game for how many years do you think you were really?
I had a good 10-year run.
Yes, I was going to about say that, 10 years. How did you know that was coming to an end? Because that always fascinates me when people change from one industry to another or one chapter to another. There's always an insight to that. It takes balls, it takes courage. I always love hearing the story of what made you realize this ship is coming to an end and I better get on the next one. Doug was the master at that. He could always see, okay, this has been a good run, but this tsunami is about to hit the beach. So what's the next wave we got to get on? And you're like that too. So I want to come back after the break and specifically talk about what made you change your business model from selling 2 or 3 real high-end 2-year-olds for $100,000, $200,000 a year to the next chapter. Okay, mate?
That'd be great.
Good deal.
Love Clinton's Uncut and Real Raw podcast? Get the merch. T-shirts, caps, and shot glasses, all available from sweet and innocent to spicy and raw. Shop the full line at shop.downunderhorsemanship.com.
Silver Spurs Equine owns and stands over 30 champion performance horse stallions. They strive to provide options to top prospects for every preference and budget. Reining is the main focus of Silver Spur's breeding program, and they have developed their $1 Million Challenge as an incredible incentive that offers huge payouts to the champions of 7 different reining competitions around the world. Silver Spurs also raises about 150 foals per year at their ranch in Oklahoma, and each one is offered to the public for sale. This provides a wide variety of options to buyers looking for their next prospect, and most would be eligible for the $1 Million Challenge. Find the perfect cross of traditional performance horse bloodlines combined with the modern dynamics of today's performance horses. All available prospects can be found at silverspurssalehorses.com.
How do you know what it takes to become successful? Talk to someone who's done it. Clinton Anderson became a multi-millionaire by leveraging his passion for horse training into a global brand and media empire, starting with nothing but the change in his pocket and the will to succeed. In doing so, he revolutionized an industry and became a celebrity. Now, you can put his experience and advice to work for your business. With Clinton Anderson's business consultancy, you can tap into Clinton's unique perspective, hear his straight talk, and get his no-nonsense advice. Just imagine yourself armed with Clinton's hard-earned knowledge and entrepreneurial spirit. So whether you own a ranch or any sort of business at all, we invite you to discover the transformative power of Clinton Anderson's leadership and innovation in your business. Call 1-888-287-7432 to take your business to the next level today.
So, Steve, we're back from our break, mate. So what was the writing on the wall? You're rocking and rolling, making some good money, I presume, and feeling on top of your game. You kind of found your niche by the sounds of it. You know, like you've been, your whole life, you're always the bridesmaid, now you're the bride. Would you that be a good way of saying it?
I was home. I had an identity. Most success I'd ever had in the horse business.
Yep.
I wasn't gone a lot. I had money in the bank. I had a nice place of my own. I wasn't having to ride horses for anybody else. It was all great.
So tell me what happened. Tell me the light that told you, okay, time to move on, time to change, time to evolve. That's the key. How do you evolve?
I did not choose that. It kind of chose me. Went through a divorce, costly, lost that place, lost my money to go buy good 2-year-olds again. You know, those are things, everybody has a life-defining moment or several.
Yep.
You know, that happened to me. I don't blame anybody. A lot of it was my poor decision-making. I had to get out of that situation I was in.
Yep.
And I paid dearly to do it. Probably shouldn't have paid as much, but like it pretty much cost me everything.
You had to start over again.
I had to start over.
I'm going to say what's on your fucking mind. Most men get completely fucked in divorces.
Well,
it ain't 50-50. It's like three-quarter. They
It
walk
buried
away
me.
with 3/4 of your shit, and you've got a quarter if you left. I'll just say what it is. Fuck it. My first wife walked away with $1.8 million tax-free money.
Yeah.
After 9, and I didn't have that 1.8 million back in those days. Like I had to work 5 years. I had to bust my ass for 5 years doing 45 clinics a year for 5 long fucking years to get that money paid off. You know what I mean? It was hard. So I exactly know what you're going through. So let's just cut to the chase. You got fucked royally. Okay?
Well, I got buried, and I bumped around in the dark for 2 or 3 years trying to just get traction again. And this has turned out to be a really valuable time in my life because it made me look at what I'm doing. As a business person, I had to start completely over because I didn't have, I wasn't a young guy anymore. I wasn't old either. But at the same time, I wanted something that would sustain me within the horse business that I could do without feeling like I had to ride 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't want to put myself through that. I came up...
Because you knew where that went. How many horse trainers could we name? I bet we could name 10 in less than 30 seconds that died broke in a single wide trailer with nothing.
Yeah, I remember one of the saddest things ever. I was really good friends with the late, great John Hoyt and Greg Darnell's wife, Sherry, a couple other really well-meaning people before he passed had bought him one of these little mini homes. But it was nice for John, and, they got it all set up there. I think Pete Kyle gave him a little piece of property, and John didn't get to live in it very long until he passed away. And I said something to Sherry about, wow, that was a really nice gesture. I wish he could have stayed longer. And she said, Steve, we need 20 more of these in the next 10 years. She started naming off horse trainers that were going to need somewhere to live out their life.
Yeah.
And that was really sad to me.
That was a wake-up call.
And it was a huge wake-up call. Yeah. And I knew that anyway. I've always tried to be forward-thinking, but I never want to be a victim. And I didn't want to ever be a sad case. There's poor old Steve, man. He had it going on. He was doing so good. He used to have all those good 2-year-olds. Look at him now.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to be that.
Yeah. So what'd you do?
I buried myself. I left that marriage with the big 3 over my head. The IRS, child support, the bank. Not only was I broke, I was buried.
Yeah.
And I'd had to sell my horse trailer and truck and do this and that, just trying to survive and pay lawyers and all that. And it forced me to sit down, and I decided, all right, I'm going to put myself through business school. And I always say to people that say, well, I'm broke, I'm struggling, I'm like, great, you got a lot of time to work on yourself.
Yeah, a lot of time to learn something.
A lot of time to learn something. And I remember telling myself, I'm going to go to college for 2 hours every day. And I set up a little office in my garage with a card table and a notepad. I'm going to study business, how it relates to my horse business, but I'm going to study business and personal development. And I found out that I had every resource I needed on my iPhone. All the information you need to do anything is on there, whether it's fix a transmission or take a company public.
Yeah.
And I'm not patting myself on the back. I did that out of necessity, but I buried myself in how I can rebuild a business with what I don't have, because I'm not even going to say with what I have, although I would sit down and make a list of my assets. Okay, you're friendly. People like you. Somebody might help you. You can ride a horse. That's good. You know, you have a saddle. Yeah. 2 bridles, you know, whatever it is. I mean, it was rough.
Yeah.
But as I started diving into that and started getting a hold of it, and I'd never studied money or investing or any of those things before, man, I started getting interested and I started taking hold of it. And that's where I really got momentum, because I realized I could get a job for some rich guy, you know, I'll still be broke 20 years from now.
Yeah.
The only hope I have is I got to start another business that's profitable, because I'm not a great investor, because I wasn't raised to that, but I do know horses. And all the wealthy customers I'd had over the years said, Steve, if you invest in what you know, which is horses, and your money will be a lot safer than if you go with the latest stock tip. So I buried myself in a re-education, rebirth, like I'm going to feed my mind. And that was the best thing I ever did for myself, and my business continues to reap the rewards from it today. And it wouldn't have got good if it hadn't gotten that bad.
You had to get a little uncomfortable.
I had to get a lot uncomfortable.
Yeah. So what happened then? Where did you go from there? How was the next part that you made money? Because, you know, at some point you moved from Stephenville out to the West Coast, right. Arizona. How'd that happen?
I moved to Arizona to become the marketing director for Silver Spurs Equine, which is an incredible opportunity.
That's right. I forgot about that. You did do that, didn't you?
It was a great opportunity.
Yes.
That kind of I didn't want to go to work for somebody, but they were persistent. And Michael Miola can be very persistent, and he made a good pitch and I just didn't want to work for anybody, Clinton. Can you imagine going to work for somebody?
No.
It's hard when you've been independent most of your life. But they offered me a nice job, which I thought, what a great opportunity. They're standing 30 stallions. I'm going to get to meet
people from all over the country.
People from all over the world. And if I handle myself right, maybe a chance to impress them, thinking like Tommy.
Yeah.
You know, and so I did that for almost 2 years. They were great.
Yep.
They gave me a great opportunity, but it was hard for me to work for somebody.
Yeah.
But I decided we're going back on our own. I resigned, told Michael, it was great, left on great terms. He offered me whatever can we make you stay? Can we? I said, no, I just want to do my own thing. And he said, I get it.
Yeah.
He had to respect that. So they were great to me. But we rented a little barn there in Scottsdale and just put this business model in effect that I'd had. And it was based on a shopping mall. One of the YouTube channels I watched was a commercial real estate broker. And he would explain how to buy and sell properties and how they cash flowed and what worked. So I got a 10-stall barn, and I looked at them like 10 rental units. And how can I maximize cash flow out of those? I set up a little business model, and I sent it to a friend of mine I grew up with that's a great businessman. And he said, God, that's great, Steve. Yeah. That's going to work. And what I said was, I'm going to charge people to provide a service. As you know, in the horse business, it's all problem solving. Mm-hmm. And a big problem people have is selling their horse. They don't like the process. They don't want to ride it. They're done with it. And so we give people a turnkey opportunity. You bring us your horse, write us a check up front for the first month's care, and that covers everything, because people hate getting nickel and dime to death. I learned that.
Yep.
And I would give them a package, which one of the things I learned in business is if you want to win in any segment of business, provide more value than your competition. It's all a value proposition. People want to get everything as cheap as they can, but if you give them value, they'll pay for it.
Oh, absolutely. And they'll pay even a premium.
They'll pay even more for it.
Like a perfect example is I buy and I also sell a lot of my horses through Solo Select that maybe don't quite make my grade. I can sell them myself off Facebook. I can sell them well. But you know why I don't, Steve? At my age, at 49, and doing what I've done for the last 29 years, I don't want to deal with the phone calls. I don't want to deal with the fucking questions. I don't want to deal with the bitching old lady. I can't handle it. Mentally, I'm fucking done. You know what Melanie does? She charges me a flat rate, takes care of all the x-rays, takes care of all the phone calls. She charges 8% commission. Done. Fucking done.
It's over.
Send it down.
It's why
I don't take, all I get is a check. Could I keep more money if I kept it myself? Yes, probably. But it's a one-stop shop. Photos, video, Everything. I love it in a heartbeat. I'm grateful to do it because she charges a premium, but she gives a premium service.
And that's exactly what we do.
You can charge a premium, but you better give a premium service.
Well, we get results.
Yes.
We get their horses put. One thing I've noticed with wealthy people is they don't mind losing money, but they feel bad if it didn't work with a horse, and they want to feel like that horse is going to a good home. And when you can facilitate that, they'll take less money just because they don't want the guilt.
Yeah.
And what you mentioned is the reason people ask me, why would a guy like Andrea Fapani send you a horse to sell? Because he doesn't want to take those phone calls. He doesn't want to make those videos.
He doesn't even have the time,
That's
even
it.
if he wanted to.
His time's
I have
too
the
valuable.
time now. I don't have the mental space anymore.
Right.
But I did it for over 29 years. You get what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely.
So I don't have the mental space for that anymore. You know what I mean? But Andrea is different. He don't even have the time to do it. Time's money. You know, I always joke about this. I'm not a handyman's arsehole. I cannot fix anything, Steve, and I'm proud of that. Do you know why? Because I figured out many, many years ago, I can make more money doing what I do for a living and pay the plumber $150 an hour to do what he does. Pay the electrician. Pay the guy to mow the lawn. I don't need to be a jack of all trades. I need to be the best at one. I need to make as much money from one thing and then pay everybody else to do. So, you know, people give me shit that I can't, you know, I can change a tire and that's about it. Okay. But I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I write a hell of a check though. Okay.
Yeah.
So you get what I'm trying to say. I can write a check real good, but I don't need to fix everything, but I can pay the best mechanic to fix it. Stick to what you're good at. Stick to what you're the best at. Figure out what your hour's worth. Sure, could I learn some of those other skills? Sure I could. But how many hours would it take for me to learn that skill set? And then how many times, Steve, would I fuck it up to doing that skill set?
Yeah.
When I could be riding a horse or
Just
doing
be
a
done.
clinic and making more money. You know, I consult for $1,000 an hour. And people freak out when they know I charge $1,000 an hour. And I don't feel bad at all because I said, most people that consult with me, I only need them for an hour. When they tell me what their problem is, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to fix, I give them $10,000 worth of value in an hour. They love it. Absolutely love it. You know, and you know, it's kind of like the old joke is, you know, it's a joke, but there's a lot of truth to be said about this, Steve. I don't know if you've heard it, I'm sure you have, about the old joke where there's a factory and a piece of machinery is broken in the factory. And they can't, nobody in the factory can get this piece of machinery working. So the whole factory's been shut down for a week. Finally, they call this different contractor and he comes in and he walks around the machine and bends over and looks underneath it and puts his hand underneath it and feels it and goes back to his toolbox and gets a screw out and comes back and screws this screw on and says to the guy, okay, try it now. And it just starts right up. And he gets his old invoice book out and writes an invoice for $5,000 and hands it to the plant manager. And the guy says, well, what do you, $5,000? Well, you were just here for 3 minutes. And I saw what you did. You just put a damn screw in there. He said, oh no, the screw wasn't $5,000. The screw was $1. It was $4,999 for the 25 years of fucking knowledge it took me to figure out what's wrong with your machine. You've had
exactly
7 other
right.
contractors in here for a week. It's been broken for a week. How much money have you lost for a week that it hasn't been operating? You brought in 7 other people that couldn't fix it. And now you want to bitch at me because I made $4,999? No, it took me 25 years to know what was wrong with that machine.
Exactly.
So that's why people, you know, horse trainers get pissed at me all the time. Why do you get $1,000? Because I know how to fucking make money in the horse business. That's why I get $1,000.
Yep.
I don't need them for 10 hours. An hour is all I need with them. And I give them the information they need. They save, typically, they either save a shit ton of money or they make a shit ton of money or both. And then they move on. So yeah, I'm going to charge you because it took me 29 years to figure out. I'd like to say I was smart and I was just good at it. I wasn't. I made about every mistake you could make. Buying, selling, trading, horses, clinicians, whatever you want. You know what I mean? I was talking to I'm not going to mention his name out of respect. He didn't give me permission to say the story, but there's another particular trainer / clinician that he said that he filmed some videos and he said he made $100,000 out of it. And I asked him how he promoted it. He told me, and I looked at him and I said, God damn, you just lost $200,000. I said, if you would have done this, this, and this, you could have made $300,000 off that in a heartbeat. He looked at me and he said, why the fuck did I not do that? And I said, yeah. When you need to know making money about horses, you know, horse industry, come see me. He laughed and he said, you're right. But that's my point.
That's it.
It was real easy for me to point it out. Now, this guy's a better horse trainer than me when it comes to showing. He can outwhip me in a heartbeat. Does that make sense? But when it comes to making money, I'm much better at him than how to do it. You can hate my guts, but I'm real good at it. You know what I mean? So that's why I charge $1,000. People get pissed at it, but I don't give a shit. I do anywhere from 2 to 4 calls a week at $1,000 per call. It's a good little pocket change, and I love helping people either save money or make money. You know, and you did too. You've learned all these lessons.
Well, and I just, I wanted a business with no startup money that would cash flow from day one. So we added up what our cost is, what's the service we'll provide. And I learned, as you said, people hate being nickel and dime. So our marketing fee, we make money at that.
Yep.
And if you look at those stalls like storage units or a training barn, okay, we cash flow as much as the training barn does. The only difference is when we started out, our horses average selling for about $22,000 a piece. Well, it's a $2,200 bonus on every one of those units every month. And if we don't sell any, our overhead's still covered. And where my business friend said it was really smart is, like, as your business goes up, your income automatically goes up because it's tied to it. So overhead's never going to get ahead of you and beat you up. And the reason I did it is because I realized that was a great sustainable way to cash flow and build a barn and a customer base. And it's been that. But what it does is, just like I did in the 2-year-old business where I trained horses, these are now the horses that cover all my overhead. So I'm allowed to have 1 or 2 or 3 really fancy high-end horses of my own that I sell when I'm ready to. And that's where the big paychecks come in.
Yeah.
But now if I sell one for $50,000 or $100,000, I don't have to rob all that profit to pay back my business, because I got a business that some months it makes more money than others, but it never fails to make money because of the way it's designed. And that's what I always try to tell people. I won on this one when I designed it right. Yeah. And when I spent that 2 years educating myself and figuring out, why do horse business training barns get bigger and then they go broke and lose more money. And
for a young person walking into the Reining fraternity, it looks like, oh my God, these trainers are making bank. But it's all a bunch of smoke and mirrors. There's $300 trucks and $300,000 trucks and trailers and $1 million buses and shit, but you have no idea of the overhead, no idea of how much debt they're in. You know what I mean? So it looks like they are grossing a tremendous amount, but the overhead is shocking because it's such a labor intensive. Whether I sell, I can have a lady in Germany at 1 o'clock in the morning, sign up to my No Worries Club. It's $40 a month. We have a little over 10,000 members in our club, so it's $40 a month. I can have her $40 at 1 o'clock in the morning on her iPhone. She puts in her credit card, her information. Within 2 minutes, she's signed up, she's logged in, she has all my videos for the last 25 years, everything I've ever produced. By 1:03 in the morning in Germany, I've got her $40. There's no customs, there's no taxes, there's no shipping. She's happy, she's on her iPad, she's watching my shit in Germany.
Yeah.
So I don't need 30 employees to make that work.
Yeah.
Because it's not a service business anymore. Remember the golden rule. There's not enough hours in the day and with your own 2 hands to get rich. Unless you're a gold maker or a sculptor or a painter or some fucked up artistic shit that's so rare, Steve, that nobody in the world can do, it's still a service business. Yeah. And you can only mark a service business up so much before people say, I'm not doing it anymore.
Won't do it.
I'm not going to pay it anymore. But if it's a perceived value, I learned this early on in marketing. Okay, this Yeti cup, I love Yeti cups. They're the best brand in the country with cups, okay? There's only so much I'm going to pay for this Yeti cup. But if Yeti said to me, hey, Clinton, how much would you pay if I told you how to make a Yeti cup? How to produce a Yeti cup? How to sell a Yeti cup? And how you can make money from Yeti cups? What would you give then? And the answer is, I'd give whatever you tell me you think it's worth. It's perceived value. Mm-hmm. But they can only mark this cup up so much before I say, fuck it, I'm not paying that anymore. That's marketing. That's perceived value.
That's true, but it's also providing value. And one of the things I asked you about a while back, because I always use this example when I'm talking to trainers, when I talk about a value proposition and marketing, I asked you out of the blue one time, I texted you, how many of those sticks have you sold? And you're like, I don't know, a bunch of them. I think you said it funnier. But I've noticed those sticks have always fascinated me because I see them everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I see people using them that aren't fans of yours. They're not devotees of you. And I'll say, but they're the best equipment for that job. If you're starting colts, you need your halter, you need your special length lead rope, you need your stick, because it's the best equipment. And I've gone out of my way to buy that.
Yeah. Andrea's wife calls me every January, and she says, Clinton, ship me 10 halter and lead ropes, 10 sticks. We've lost all the sticks. We've lost all the halters. We're starting colts. It's January 1st. Like, I know when Tisha's going to call me, it's January 1st of every year. There's 10 more halters, 10 more sticks go out the door. But because it's good shit.
It is. And for people that, like, believe in investing in their tools, or just anybody that's out there and tried to do any of that stuff, they realize how much value comes from that equipment that you made because it just works. And that's the value proposition. People will pay for something that gives them value.
I always had this business model for my whole career. I don't care if you charge $100 for this Yeti cup, okay? Make them feel like they got $110 worth of value.
Well,
if you sold them a $100,000 horse, make them feel like it was $110,000 worth of value. Make every customer walk away feeling that they got a little win on you. They got a little, I kind of fucked Clinton just a little bit on that deal. I kind of got the upper advantage. I want them to feel that way. I want them to feel like they got me, just a little. Because that high, they'll come back again. You know what I mean? Always give more than what they pay for. You know, somebody, you know, horse trainers get pissed at me. Fuck it, I'll say it anyway. We have this Academy Training Horse program. We've always had it for years, okay? When I retired for the last 4 years, we hadn't had it. We brought it back the last year. We get $7,500, Steve, for training somebody's horse for 6 weeks and $1,000 a month board. That's unheard of, isn't it, in the Western world? Most horse trainers are $1,500 to $1,850. We get $7,500 for 6 weeks plus $1,000 board, okay? And trainers get pissed. How the fuck do you get that? Well, for starters, we just have 4 horses per student. Not 40, not 14 colts, just 4. They work with those 4 for about 2.5 hours a day, 6 days a week. We get more done in 6 weeks than what most horse trainers get done in 6 months. Well, part of my gig is and I give them a money-back guarantee too. No horse trainers do that. If you send your horse to me, you don't like the job, you don't pay. I give a money-back guarantee on our job. If you show up after 6 weeks, you don't think we did our job, you don't pay the bill. And I absolutely stand by it. Well, when they come to the ranch, when they leave, we have a brand new halter and lead rope on the horse, a brand new stick and string, and a brand new set of 4 legacy boots, classic Equine legacy boots. Been using them for 20 years. I just give all that to the owner. And the owner says, well, hey, don't you want this? No, it's your gift. You would act like I gave him $1 million. But yeah, I don't charge him for it, but it's just my way of letting them feel like they got a little win on me. You got a brand new halter and lead rope worth $100 and something, brand new set of legacy boots, brand new stick. You got the equipment to go home and have fun with it. It's my way of saying thank you, but it's their way of feeling like they got a little win on me.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things we do, and if you sell horses, you should steal this idea from me. Because years ago, I bought a horse from a guy, and I went to pick it up, and he wouldn't give me a halter. And I didn't have one. And he played hardball, and I had to get a string together off some hay. And
you're shitting me.
Get this horse in the trailer. So when somebody comes to my house and they bought a horse now, we have a large selection of brand new halter and lead ropes. And the question is, what color would you like?
Yes.
People delight in getting to pick a halter and because I made sure nobody's going to make me feel. And I bought horses too where they'll throw in a halter, but it's chewed in half and the lead rope's too like I want them. If they just bought a $40,000, $50,000 horse for me, hey,
do what you have to do to make them feel like you went above and beyond. Always give a customer more than what they paid for, so that they think they got the win on you. Everybody wants to feel like they got to win. They never want to feel like they got to lose. And most people don't even want to feel like they broke even. That's still not a high. It's the what do they get extra for it?
Ever wanted to own a champion? Clinton Anderson, world-class horse trainer and competitor, has been spotting and developing promising horses into greatness for decades. Now, he is offering an exclusive ownership opportunity to create champion horses. Introducing Clinton Anderson's Performance Partnership. In this exclusive program, you and Clinton will co-own a top-tier performance horse that will be meticulously trained and cared for by Clinton Anderson himself. This isn't just an investment, it's a first-hand experience of horsemanship excellence. With Clinton's help and advice, you'll choose the horse that resonates with your ambitions, and Clinton takes the reins from there. From training to stabling, from the practice arena to the winner's circle, Clinton's unwavering dedication ensures that your equine athlete reaches its full potential. This partnership is about more than business. It's about a shared passion for equestrian excellence. And Clinton Anderson isn't just your trainer, he's your partner, fully invested in every horse's success. Together, you'll share in the excitement, the prestige, and the profits. Membership is strictly limited to ensure each investor receives personalized attention and commitment. It's your chance to be part of an exclusive equine ownership community that combines the excitement of competition with the satisfaction of success. Don't miss your opportunity to join Clinton Anderson's Performance Partnership, a unique collaboration that transforms dreams into equine champions. Experience the heart of horsemanship excellence. Find out more at ClintonAndersonPerformanceHorses.com.
I've seen some advertising from you lately in the last year, and I honestly don't know, so I want to ask you now. What is it? Like, do you have a subscription? Is it a course? What are you selling now that I've noticed you doing some advertising on?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. Look, when I started my brokerage business in Scottsdale, I knew that was going to be my core, but I had a number of businesses that I wanted to spin off of that. One of them's a spa, I think you mentioned.
Yep.
It's passive income, semi-passive, because I have a minimum wage girl that runs that.
Yep.
Does a great job. I just check in on it, but it's a great add-on.
The spas are good, aren't they?
The spas are good, but I tell people, if you can't afford a spa, get on Facebook Marketplace, buy you a Dr. Pepper machine for $200.
Yep.
You'll get $40-50 beer money out of it every month if you hide the key from your help. But like these ideas of passive income started coming to me and extra streams of income. And, I would make little signs and put in my closet and stuff, say, what idea are you going to come up with today that's going to make you money and not involve you riding a horse?
Yes.
And I came up with a project that I wanted to do, and it took literally years to get it launched off the ground. I started a thing called the Steve Ross Academy. It's an online business entrepreneurial course just for horse trainers. Like it's aimed at people just like me that got halfway through their life and I had emptied the chamber at getting good at my craft. I was really good at doing my little part of the horse business, but I found out that wasn't worth any money.
Yeah.
There's no value in the marketplace for what I do. And most people got bitter, and I just said, okay, no, I got to make myself a more high-value commodity. So I started a course a little over a year ago for horse trainers on how to run their business better. A lot of the things I learned, you mentioned it, I know everything not to do in running a business.
I'm not ashamed of that.
I'm not either.
I'd like to say that I'm really smart because I never made a mistake. No, I'm smart because I fucked about everything up.
Yeah, and
I've made the same. I'd like to say I only made the same mistake once, but sometimes I made it 2 times. Okay,
Yeah.
Sometimes I made it 3 times, but I won't make it a 4th time. So a lot of this comes from like that joke about the $5,000 bill. You didn't pay $5,000 for me to fix the machine. You paid $4,999 for the 25 years of experience it took me to figure out what was wrong with your damn machine.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
It's exactly right. And I failed on a biblical scale like you did or anybody ever has. Sometimes life gets out of control, and it forced me to dig deep and figure out what can I do with the skill set I have, because I'm not going to not be a horse trainer at that point in my life.
Yeah.
And so I started this course, Clinton, and man, it's been the greatest thing ever.
So tell me a little bit more about the course. How much does it cost?
It's about $2,500
And is that per month, per year?
for a
What is it?
year.
For a year.
For the whole thing.
And do they get access to you, or how does that work?
We have a lot of ways to get access. Like we have a weekly call where we just kind of collaborate. I send them classroom stuff that I think is important. For the first 6 weeks, there's just stuff horse trainers don't get taught.
Yeah.
How to run a business. People don't understand auctions. The highest selling everything in every category happens at an auction.
Yeah.
But horse people, they put the horse they don't want in a sale. When it doesn't bring what they wanted, they blame the auction company. A lot of things like that. I have an app that looks like Facebook where my students and I can collaborate throughout the week. I'll challenge people like, hey, if you got a horse to sell, you got to post your ad, your pictures, and your video on here first. And then I go in there and shoot them down. But you know what? The students love it because I've shown them through my own horses and their horses. You get your media right, you get instant results.
Yeah.
And if you don't get any results.
That's right.
Like I've got a horse we just sold for $50,000. We could have sold him 5 times in the first 24 hours. Another trainer had him advertised for 6 months and had no response.
Yeah.
We took exactly as I said, I'm going to challenge you. We're going to do the pictures, we're going to do the video, and we're going to write the ad.
Yeah.
Your horse is not your problem. Your marketing's terrible.
Yes.
And it's a $50,000 mistake. It went from no interest to how many people can we sell him to. It tells me marketing matters.
Marketing's a big deal. One of the best lessons I ever learned. And so, you know, a lot of people say, Clinton, your marketing's really good. And it is, but I give a lot of credit, all the credit to my marketing company. I've had them for 20 years now. Well, actually not that quite, probably about 16, 17 years. And when I hired them, see, for the first 10 years, Steve, I was so poor I had to do everything myself. You know, you're robbing from Peter to pay Paul, so I did it all myself. When I finally got some coin, I realized, I got to about 10 million a year in gross sales, and I realized, okay, I'm at my limit. I didn't graduate high school. I'm a good salesman, but I'd reached my limit. I could not get any better with my skill set. So I went and hired a really good marketing company to take me to the next level. And they absolutely did. After that, I crushed it, okay? And one of the first marketing lessons Dan Stewart ever taught me is this. I walked into his office and he said, okay, you're in school. And he said, I want you to go to Neiman Marcus, and he said, I want you to buy the 5 most expensive women's perfumes that you can find, the most expensive ones, and then come back next week and show them to me. So I go buy them all up, come back a week or 2 later, walk into his office, okay? And I lay them all out on the table, okay? And he says, what do you notice about these? And I said, they're really expensive. You know, they were anywhere from, you know, $300 to $600, you know, expensive little bottles of fucking perfume. And he said, but what else do you notice? And I said, the packaging's really nice. And he said, yeah, it is. And he said, let's open the packaging. So we opened all the packaging. And he said, listen to me carefully. He said, packaging sets the tone of the product. He said, do you know how much that bottle of perfume really cost to produce? I said, no. He said, probably $5 at best. So for that $400 bottle of perfume you paid, $399 was for the packaging, $5 was for the perfume. He said, let me give you an example. He said, you could give a woman a $2 million diamond ring. Big old fucking rock. Every woman's just panting over this sumbitch, okay? But if you hand it to her in a brown, crumpled up paper bag, and you say, here, honey, have a look at this. Before she opens it, she thinks whatever's in it's shit. She don't like it. It's a brown paper bag. It's all crinkled up. When she opens it and she pulls out that big old ring, that ring has to work really, really hard to overcome the shitty packaging. He said the opposite's true. If I buy her a $50,000 ring, but I spent $100,000 on the packaging, so I only got $150 in it now. Mm-hmm. I spent $100,000 on the packaging and give her a $50,000 ring. As I hand that package to her, she's already slavering. She's already drooling. Her pussy's wet. I mean, this bitch is all over the place, Steve, okay? She just can't wait to open this sumbitch. She opens it up and it fucking sings. Woo! It just sings, this diamond ring. I spent $150. She's all over the place, ready to fuck my brains out. $2 million ring. She likes it, but man, she had to really get over that packaging.
Yeah.
You remember my old ranch in Stephenville? I spent $100,000 on the entrance.
It's beautiful.
For that reason. When people come into your ranch, the first thing they see is the gate, the sign. I spent 42 grand just on my signs because I wanted people to drive in and say, wow. The next thing I wanted them to say, Steve, is, holy shit, this is going to be expensive. I wanted them to say. I didn't want them to think Walmart. I wanted them to think Lamborghini, Ferrari, expensive. You notice how long my driveway was? That was by design. That wasn't I could have built everything in those front fields.
Sure.
I deliberately designed it long from a marketing standpoint because I wanted it to be like this big journey. That they went down this big long road and then wow, it just opened up to this big indoor arena. So I'm trying to sell a $200,000 yearling. I want them to think it's going to be expensive from the second they look at my gate. Most horse trainers fail that. Your gate is the most important advertising part of your ranch. That's the first thing they saw. Remember how I used to keep that entrance like looking like a golf course? The front of my ranch, all my ranch actually, but the front especially. I mow it every 4 days. I mean, it's got to look like a golf course because you only get one impression, don't you, Steve?
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
Kind of like a virgin. It only happened once. You only get that one thing once. So you only get one first impression. The first impression they should see of your ranch should be expensive, quality, and this is not going to be cheap. Does that make? But if the gate's off the fucking hinges, there's weeds growing up in the corner, your sign's crooked, you haven't painted the fence in 5 years, they're thinking broke dick motherfucking horse trainer. That's what they're thinking.
And they're thinking, to me, you subconsciously say, I don't think enough of this horse to fix the gate.
Yes.
Like,
The $200,000 yearling has to work so much harder when the gate sucks. When the entrance sucks, it's like the brown paper bag. The horse has to work so much harder to wow the customer.
Yeah.
Let's wow them as they walk in. Let's wow them from the first experience.
And I'll take that another way, like, because I've had a lot of different barns. Your barn doesn't have to look like the Taj Mahal, but when I was broke, that alleyway was raked perfectly. Everything was clean. People notice that.
They do.
And people that are going to maybe trust you with a horse that they're emotionally invested in, they really notice that.
Cobwebs.
Yeah.
Power wash. How many
horse
horse trainers don't power wash their barn?
All
Power
of them.
wash your barn once a year. Every August I power wash all my barns, everything. Get rid of everything. It just makes it look brand new again, once a year. But they're just simple things that don't have to cost a lot of money. Again, it doesn't have to be gold-plated doorknobs, but it has to act like you give a shit about being there. How do people sign up for your course? Is it online or they call you? How do they do this?
They can go to steverossacademy.com and check it out there. And it's, it is just for horse trainers.
Yeah.
Like, it is really, I don't think there's anything like it. We've got 126 students now. Our first class just graduated.
Good for you.
And it's been the most rewarding thing I've ever done because now that I'm old, you're the same way. Like, I'm starting to see part of myself. I see some of these young people, boys and girls, and they want it so bad, and they're struggling financially, and they don't know, like I've done it. I quit the horses and managed a car dealership for a couple of years. The worst time in my life. But I felt like the guy in the Count of Monte Cristo the whole time I'm plotting my escape, or the guy in the Shawshank Redemption. Yeah. I'm going to use this time to figure out, and that's when I got in the 2-year-old business, how I can do this on my own terms and make money at it. Because, like we talk, the horse business picks you, you don't pick it, and it's a bad thing to feel like
it's a drug, isn't it?
It is, but it's a bad thing to feel like you're stuck in something you can't get out of. The great author, Ben Green, I don't know if you read those books, Horse Trading. He was a horse trader from Weatherford back in the 30s. And he described horses as being like a terminal disease. And he said, the best thing I can do is learn all I can about it so I can manage the symptoms.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we try to do. Look, we're not going to deny you're a horse trainer. You're stuck with that. But let's embrace it. And there are better ways to make money at this than what we've all been doing.
Yes.
And some passive income things. Look, you know this. The rest of the world doesn't know this. We stumbled upon by accident that Facebook and YouTube will pay you for your content because they started paying us.
Yeah.
Through no fault of our own. We just produced enough content trying to sell horses. They're like, hey, you know what? Here's a nice little check for you. And I know people that should only have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And they make more money than they would training their 10 horses every day.
Oh, absolutely.
But as we've gotten to dive into these things, it's been fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I think I'm curious with you talking to horse trainers, because a lot of the people that call me in the consulting, I would say 2/3 of the people that call me are horse trainers, okay?
Yep.
And 1/3 of them are horse owners.
We've got some crossover.
Yeah, I've sent people your
Yeah.
way. I've sent certain people your way that want to buy certain horses, and I said, go see this guy. He's really good. You know, go see him. And I've sent a lot of people your way to do business with you. But the one common thing that I see that with the horse trainers that call me is they almost take it like a badge of honor that they're booked up 9 months in advance. Like I had a guy call me 2 weeks ago, and he said, "Yeah, Clinton, I'm booked for a year in advance. I'm really happy about that." And I said, "You should be ashamed of yourself." And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You mean to tell me you have a waiting list of a year of horses to come into your barn?" He said, yeah, that's good. I said, "No, that's terrible." I said, "That means you're way too fucking cheap, way too cheap. If you have a waiting list more than 4 months, go up on price."
Yeah.
Go up on price. He said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "How many horses do you ride?" He said, "About 12 a day." I said, "Okay. How many horses are trying to get in there?" "As many as I want." I said, "Okay, well, how about," I think he was charging $1,200. I said, "How about we raise that to $2,000? But people will leave." And I said, "Who gives a shit? You got 12 months of people there." I said, "Do you do a really good job?" He said, "Hell yes, I do." I said, "Great." I said, "Even if half the barn walked out and you charge $2,000 a horse, you're still going to make more money riding 6 horses than 12. And on those 6, you can do a much better job." And I said, "But I'll make a gamble with you. I'll bet you the consultant fee." I said, "I'll bet you $1,000 you just paid me, that if you take my advice and you double your rates, not one person will drop off that waiting list." And he said, "Well, how do I tell all the people I'm going up on price?" I said, "Real easy." I said, "I'll help you write a letter. It'll be real professional. Okay, I'll help you write a letter, and that way you just mail it out to all your customers. Email, okay?
Done.
And it's done. You don't have to have 40 different conversations, 40 different people bitching. And I'm going to write this letter so well that the customers are going to feel lucky to even stay in your barn. That's how well I'm going to write this letter. You're going to basically say you're going up $800 a month. You love their business. You want to do a good job. But if you need to leave, we completely understand." Which is a polite way of saying, I don't fucking need you. And when you tell people you don't need them, they want you even more. He called me back a month later and said, "You were right. Not one person dropped out." He said, "I've got a bigger problem. I still got a year's waiting list." I said, "Right,
paid.
we got a new problem. Got to raise it again."
Yeah.
He said, "When?" I said, "Wait 6 months. Now go up to 25.
Yeah.
6 months, wait, go up 25. Keep going up until you get that waiting list down to about 4 months. When you got it down to 4 months," because he was a colt starter, so he's riding them 60, 90 days, turning them over, 60, 90 days. I said, "You're just a slave for these people. Yeah. All you're doing is starting colts. You're not getting a show. You're not getting to win prize money. Fuck, you're not even getting to sell them. You're just a slave for these people. So if you're going to be a slave, get paid for being a slave."
Totally.
And you know what I mean? Not one person dropped out.
No, and it's our fault. We as
horse trainers are the biggest fucking pussies in the world when it comes to raising their prices. I can't tell you, Steve, how many horse trainers since, you heard the Gauge podcast I did 4 years ago where I just fucking blew up. That was right. In my defense, that was right after I got retired. I was burnt out mentally, alcoholic. I just fucking let that rip on the Gauge, okay? But I can't tell you how many horse trainers have walked up to me and said, "Clinton, you gave me the confidence to raise my prices. You gave me the confidence to say, fuck it, I'm not going to die broke." Everybody thinks when you raise your prices, your barn's going to go empty. If you give great quality service and you really give above and beyond, nobody's going to leave. And the ones that do, you didn't need them anyway. There's always going to be the young guy that'll undercut you by $100. Let him go broke by himself.
Yeah, exactly. And, one of the things I talk about in the course that's sad to me, because I don't know a higher skilled position than horse trainer. Like if you're good at horse training, if you're average at horse training, even if you're below average at horse training, you know that the number of years and the number of hours it took to get there. And I looked this up, and the average horse trainer in America makes $41,000 a year. You can make that work in fast food.
Absolutely.
And that's a shame. And if we paid you by the hour at $41,000 a year, you're so far below minimum wage. So my message to horse trainers is you got to start it's not even charging more, but that's it. But
It's giving more.
well, you got to create more value.
Like I said, we charge $7,500,
Value.
but we only take 4 horses. We spend 2.5 hours with a horse. Most horse trainers, their 2-year-old guy, what's he riding a 2-year-old for 25 minutes, 30 at best?
Yeah.
At best. We're spending 2.5 hours. We don't need 20 horses in training. We just need 4.
Well, let me tell you when I understood the value proposition, because when I was studying this, and one of the big questions I had were, some of the most talented riders I've ever known are in the Western performance horse business, and they don't have any money, and they're not going to have any money. And yet I know a number of clinicians, you were one of them, that are doing great. And you're obviously a really talented trainer. Whether you had chose just to go performance horses, you'd have done great that. You chose to build a business, and I respect that. But I know some other clinicians that don't have your talent that are doing really well financially. And I figured out, well, they built a better mousetrap.
Yeah.
I have a clinician friend, and I won't name their name, but they asked me one time, could you come for a month? I need you to come for an hour on Wednesdays and talk to this group about reining. And I'll pay you, it's like $1,000 a week or something. I'm like, for an hour? Do I have to smuggle drugs? Like, what are we, is there anything
put
else?
something up my ass, or what am I gonna do?
Do we have to?
Is it illegal?
Anyway, they said no. What they did, I can't remember the name of it, but it was $7,500. These people moved in there for a month, and they rode all day, every day for a month, and they limited it to 12. And I did the math real quick in my head and said, okay, that's a tough month, because they get up, arena riding in the morning, trail obstacles in the afternoon, troubleshooting, and then once a week Steve would come and do reining. Ton of value. These people all were thrilled to spend the $7,500. 12 times $7,500. That's more than most performance horse trainers make in a year. I remember when you had your colt starting university there at Stephenville, and Boo came over.
The academy.
Yeah.
I take in, now in Stephenville, I used to take in 20 people. With the new ranch, it's a lot smaller. I only take 10. I take 10 people. They pay me $20,000 each. They bring 2 horses. Okay. They stay for 7 weeks. And if they pass the academy, they can teach the fundamental level of my method. Okay, if they don't pass the level, they obviously don't pass. It's not just because you paid the money doesn't mean you pass.
Yeah.
And people say, well, Clinton, why would somebody pay you $20,000? Because when they get graduated, they can charge $7,500.
Exactly.
And people always say, well, the local guy down the road, he charges $1,000. I said, he's not your competition.
Yeah.
We don't give a shit about the local horse trainer. He's trying to make a living training 15, 20 horses. You just need 4. Fuck, you need 2 at $7,500. That's $15,000 every 6 weeks.
Exactly.
You don't need that many people. So what they're paying for knowledge in the $20,000. But then I charge them $1,500 a year franchise fee. So we have over 100 people in the academy that pay me $1,500 a year as a franchise fee. What is that fee? I do all their advertising. I do all their marketing. Support. I do everything for them. All they got to do is pick up the phone and train the horse. That's it. I send everything their way. I look at my marketing like a big bus. And I say to the students, right, we got this bus. It's kind of expensive, and it chews a lot of diesel. All I need you to do is pay a little bit of the fare. Just buy a little ticket, get on my bus. I'll take you where you want to go. No freeloaders on the bus, though. Right. Everybody's got to pay. Does that make sense? But if we all pay, this marketing bus will go right down the road. Now, it's not smoke and mirrors. A lot of horse trainers get pissed at me. It ain't smoke and mirrors. We get them broke to death for people. You know what I mean? But again, we can spend 2.5 hours a day with a horse because we don't have to ride 15. We got 4.
Do a better job.
I had a barrel racing lady just give us a horse for the academy program. And we put it through the program, and she came out to watch the horse, and she looked at me and she said, Clinton, you saved me about 10 months of horse training.
Thank you.
Seriously.
Yeah.
She said, yeah, you were expensive, but she said it would have taken 10 more months to get half as good as what you guys got done. Now I can just go straight to what I want to do with those. Put it in barrel train and we're done. You know what I mean? So as long as you're giving value, I don't give a fuck if you charge $10,000 a month. Make sure they get $11,000 of value. Charge what you want, but always make sure they get more value than what you're charging, and you'll be in good shape.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Well, Steve, thank you for taking the time to meet with me. You're an honor and a credit. You're great for the Western horse industry. I love listening to your commentary. When you commentary the Reining Futurity and all the big events, what I love about your commentary is you talk about what the horses are doing. You talk about the different training techniques. You talk about the history of the horses. So if anybody wants to watch the live feed, go ahead and do it, because you're a master at what you do. You're a craft at a commentary. You're obviously a craft at your horse training, but you're smart enough to realize you don't want to work 16 hours a day and die broke. And I don't think that's something to be ashamed about. A lot of people in the Western industry, Steve, in my opinion, feel like talking about money is shameful. You can't talk about money. That's bad to be rich. Fuck that. I don't want to die poor.
No.
I don't want to die poor.
I want options.
Yes.
I want options.
I want to know your opinion on this. In every other industry in the world, when you get wealthy or become successful at it and make a lot of money, everybody praises it. Like, man, you were smart. You built 3 car dealerships, or you built up a plumbing business and duplicated it 5 times, whatever it is. But isn't it funny in the horse industry? Have you noticed when you become financially successful in the horse business or make a lot of money in horses, people shit on it. People think negatively about it. It's almost looked down upon. Why do you think that is? Do you think I'm full of shit when I say that or not?
No, you're exactly right. And this is where you're going to back me up.
Tell me why you think it happens.
Well, it's 2 things. And number 1, it's just not that you're successful. You've been through this way more than I ever have, but I've been through it on a lesser degree too. When you step out from the herd, and you and I both will, and have both always been willing to say, okay, that's fine, but I'm going to go out and try it this way.
Yeah, I'm going to blaze a path.
And you've had a ton of success. And I always say you can spot the pioneers because they're the ones with the arrows in their back.
Yeah.
But part of it is, there's a certain amount of jealousy because we're in such a competitive business and we're all competing for the same owners, customers, prize money, market share, whatever it is. But the other side is people get insecure when they see an animal leave the herd. And we're in a herd, and like, when I've stepped out there, like when I started this course, and I know with you, when you've started out there, I've defended you to so many people that don't know you, that have never met you. Yeah. And they'd say, well, that guy's full of shit, And I said, whoa, wait a minute. You know him? I've never met him. I watched his show on RFD. And I said, well, I lived across the highway from the guy for years. Yeah. And this is what I saw him do. And this is the heat I saw that guy take and overcome it. They don't see the downside. They see you benefiting. And you told me years ago, you said, I'm going to be different from everybody else. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn because you weren't criticizing anybody. But you said, I see all these other trainers and they work and work and work and show. And when they get to a point in their career where they can't do it anymore, now they want to start giving clinics and making some money and putting something together for their retirement. And you said, I'm going to do it the other way.
I'm going to do it the opposite.
I'm going to start with the money-making business building young, and when I get older, and you're not yet, I'm going to show the kind of horses I want to. So you've called your shot. Yeah. You've always done what you said you were going to do.
You got to live and die by your side, by your sword. For me, Steve, it's very hard for me to understand people's mentality about jealousy about people doing well, because when I see people making more money than me, I'm inspired. When I see people smarter than me, I'm inspired. I want to be in the room and be the dumbest guy in the room. I want to be in a room, be the poorest guy in the room. Yeah. People that are doing better than me inspire me. But I thought for many years, I thought everybody's just like me. You got to get around winners. No. A lot of people resent winners.
They don't like it.
They don't like it at all. It makes them feel uncomfortable. I try to get around people kicking my ass. I try to get around people that are doing better than me because I want to be better than them. Yeah. When I see somebody doing well, I'm like, fuck, I got a hard dick. It's like, yeah, this is awesome. It pumps me up to be this. You know why I do this podcast? To be around people like you. Be around winners. I want to talk to winners. Yeah. This podcast cost me about $125,000 a year, okay, out of my own pocket. I do it to be around winners. I do it to be around successful people. I do it to pick the brains. People say, how do you get your guests? It's real fucking easy. People I want to talk to. Yeah. People I want to learn what their secrets. And people I want to know why they're successful. That's why I do it. It's not magic. People that inspire me to be better.
And that's the only reason I jumped at this when you told me, hey, would you come to Arkansas and do this? Because believe it or not, I get offered a lot of these and I turn them all down. Because I've always wanted to kind of do my own thing. Yeah. But I know what you've done. I know where you came from. I was really fortunate that we were neighbors in Stephenville for so long, because sometimes we'd go months without seeing each other. But got to be around you on a regular enough basis and see what you're about. And you were one of my inspirations for trying to build a better horse business and figure out what people will pay for and what's valuable to them. And you've really tapped into that.
Well, thank you.
And your ideas about value and providing customer satisfaction and just getting the job done. I always say the horse business isn't hard, but you got to put the work in. You got to go do it.
You got to work real hard. Wrapping up now. If I had to go back and talk to a 20-year-old or 21-year-old Steve Ross, and I ask every guest this, okay? And I'm not saying at 21 we would have listened to ourselves, okay? Because at 21 we're full of piss and vinegar and think our shit doesn't stink. But at 21, what would you tell Steve Ross? If you had to give him any life lessons, it could be one lesson or two or three, I don't care. What would that be?
The big one would be, when I was 21, the only skill set I thought mattered was my horse training skill set. And I poured myself into that. I would hate to think now, if I devoted just a little bit time to some personal development then, whether it's, they don't teach us anything about investing or business in school.
Customer skills.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I believe the schools, the government, the powers that be, whoever, they want to train employees, subservient workers, robots. And that's what they make in school. And so there was so much I didn't learn. I was so ill-equipped to run a business that I wish I'd have paid attention to that earlier on. I'm thankful that halfway through my life I got a wake-up call, and out of necessity, I had to figure out a better way to do it. But I've benefited greatly from that since then. And what I always tell horse trainers is what I'd tell 21-year-old me. Like, hard work's important, and it will get you there faster, but it's more important to have a good plan that you're working on. Because I can take the old failed horse trainer business model and I can work myself into the grave, and how hard I work will not matter. I'll die just as broke.
One of the greatest things that I love about the podcast is I'm going to different horse shows and places in public, and people recognize me. And it's really cool how many young people are walking up to me. I don't know their names. They're under 30. I've never met them. And they walk up to me and shake my hand, and they look me square in the eye, girls and guys, and they say, "Clinton, thank you for the podcast. It's making me hungry. It's making me want to make more money. It's making me work harder. It's making me dig deeper." I love inspiring young people to kick ass, do well. Winners want to be around fucking winners. Let the losers be around the losers. Winners be winners. And I love, at this stage of my life now, I'm not that old, but 49, I'm getting a lot of enjoyment out of seeing young people kick ass and do well in life and avoid some of the mistakes that me and you made. You know what I mean? I wish I could go back and talk to myself now at 21. Yeah. I'd like to say I was wise enough to maybe listen. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. But I love that about the podcast, that it's inspiring young people in the horse business to be better. Not be fucking worse, not be lazier, not be bums, be better. Yeah. Steve, cheers to you, brother. Thank you for all your service and everything you do for the Western industry.
Glad to do it. Thanks so much for having me. This is such an honor. I feel like this is the gold standard in the performance horse business. And I think you got a real platform, and I wasn't going to say it, but I love that this has become a lot more than just about horses. I really do think you're inspiring people. In this little segment of the world we have in the performance horse world, we need a voice like that tells people, you can do this. And I know, like, for those of you that don't know Clinton, I've known him a long time. You're an overcomer. You never let your circumstances hold you down. I'd like to think I'm somewhat that way, but you'd be amazed what you can do if you apply yourself. And absolutely. I know that sounds like just everybody's uncle or dad or whatever. But what was the quote you had when we started this?
If you want something bad enough, you'll find a way. And if you don't, you'll find an excuse.
Exactly.
Quote Ian Francis. Won the Reining Futurity 5 times in Australia, won the Cut and Futurity twice, reserve champion twice. Ian Francis is 84. I promise you, he could write a check that would shock me and you.
Yeah.
He has invested his money in all those years, lived very modestly, and invested, and that's where I learned a lot of my lessons from. He could write a check that would shock me and you for being a horse trainer. Absolutely shock us.
Yeah.
Because he was smart with his money. Not only was he talented, but he was smart. Steve, we've got to wrap up now, mate. We've got to go get a steak and a few more cocktails and a few more stories and lies.
Let's do it.
Thank you, brother.
Clinton, I appreciate it.
Cheers. Today's episode is brought to you by Coal Creek Equine, makers of the best equine spa in the industry. If you want your horses to be world champions, you better put them in a Coal Creek. Today's episode was filmed and produced by Uncut Productions, marketing by Stewart & Associates, and organized and administrated by Down Under Horsemanship. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button and leave a rating. Follow us and stay up to date on social media, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. See you next time, mate. Cheers.